Euphemism for poo-poo. I remember that one. Crazy.
Tonight's low near 50 with partly cloudy skies, and most of Wednesday looks dry with highs near 80 once again. Scattered showers and thunderstorms return Wednesday night into part of Thursday. Could see some of those into Friday as well with highs in the mid to upper 70s toward the end of the work week. Check out Ripley's Aquarium of the Smokies and their brand new exhibit, The Savage Seas, now open at the Aquarium of the Smokies. From the 6th Storm Team, I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Hinkin for the East Tennessee Weather Network.
It's 49 at Talk Radio 92.3 and AM 760.
Uncle Lem's Outfitters is now open in Pigeon Forge at 2450 Parkway. Check out the new styles for spring. Great brands like Patagonia. Sale also applies at their 9715 Kingston Pike location in West Knoxville.
Traffic from the FMT Insurance Studios of Talk Radio 92.3 and AM 760.
Got a problem on North Road Drive in Farragut in front of the Y. There's a wreck with injuries. They've had traffic stopped in both directions on North Road Drive near the Y, a little bit west of Concord Park. They're hoping to get a lane reopened here shortly, but right now they're backed up about a mile in both directions on North Road Drive Farragut near the Y, west of Concord Park. Injury wreck. A few minutes, no surprising any of the slowdowns into downtown Knoxville. Carpenter bees, yep, Dates Pest Control, get rid of them. 588-6686. I'm Pete Michaels.
Tuesday on Real News, Roz is gonna lose her cool 'cause she tells me that she does something stupid. It's okay, Roz, we love you and you know that. What? I thought it was great. Great! I thought it was great. It's not bad for just picking it up on Saturday, right? Check this out. Look at this finger picking I learned. Wait, listen to this, Look how good I am. Watch this. Wait, for real, wait. That's not bad, right? That's baller. Yeah. Well, you know, I got some skills, you know.
Hey, what's up? That's right. This song is, it's quite pertinent for the moment at hand. It's felt like days go by where the Real News audience couldn't live without me because I had a flat tire this morning. Did you tell them that, Roz, or they just now discovering this information now? We just rolled straight into, wait. Why is Real News not live today? Why am I hearing Shine again? Is this a double dose of Shine in the morning? No, I'm back on the way in this morning. I was actually telling our great guest right now, every Tuesday now you can hear her, Miss Sherry Voluntary. How you doing?
I am wonderful, but you already knew that.
That's true. I was telling Miss Sherry Voluntary, by the way, this is Real News broadcasting live. We are now live from the FMT Insurance Studios. We'll be live for the rest until 10 o'clock as well. My Facebook folks, Cool Kids Table, are in here. I was telling Miss Sherry Voluntary in the end, on the way in, I was going through the Solway area this morning. A big semi-truck drove by me. Come on. Really? Already? We just started this stream. There's so much stuff going wrong today, Roz. I'm telling you.
It's one of those days.
Hold on 2 seconds. Did I? Oh, we're still live. Eat that, Warner Brothers. All right. Well, until Warner Brothers totally shuts me off. They just said I got kicked off because of that stupid song. Anyways, I was going through Solway this morning. Heard a semi-truck go by me, and it made one of those sounds that sounds like a flat tire. And I was like, oh, man, the semi's got a flat tire. They're going to have a problem. Where are they going to pull over here going through Solway? And then the semi goes by me, and I thought, oh, wait, no, that's my that's my car. As soon as I realized my car was dramatically pulling to the left, I was like, whoops. Had to jump out, change the tire real quick. But we're in. We're doing it live now. What was I going to say here? Yes, the Sri Lanka stuff. That's what we're picking up with right now. We're going to continue on as if we were doing a live show anyways, because that's what we're doing now. Sherry Voluntary every Tuesday, like I said, heard here now on Real News. Tell them real quick where they can hear your stuff as well.
YouTube. You can go to Facebook to the Sherry Voluntary Show and find it all. But it's YouTube, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn. Yeah, lots of different places, just about everywhere.
All the places.
All the places.
And there's so many headlines I want to get to today. There's a couple national stuff going on. One of my favorite headlines I read I read this yesterday. Facebook's new chief lawyer helped write the Patriot Act is now going to be, the guy who helped write the Patriot Act is now going to be Facebook's chief lawyer. If no one sees a problem with that, then I need to break this down for you. The headline alone should probably be enough to just think, all right, okay, now I see where Facebook's trying to go with this entire thing. Slate is saying that the Mueller reports are presenting an irrefutable case that Trump is unfit for office. I don't know, man. I have one final point I want to make about this Mueller report, probably in this segment right now, and then I may or may not put this thing to bed. Bob Woodward has come out of the woodwork, so to speak, now saying that the FBI and the CIA handling of the Steele dossier needs to be investigated. Really, Bob? Seriously? Well, where were you with this 6 months ago, Bob? I mean, you're the one that out there was touting that Trump is losing his mind, that we should consider the 25th Amendment to impeach the guy. And now, listen, the FBI and the CIA are handling the Steele dossier. It needs to be investigated. All right, fine. I'll take you at your word now, Bob, I suppose. House Judiciary Chair subpoenas ex-White House counsel Don McGahn. We all knew that was coming, right? Let's see here. Hey, another case I want to get into that's going to bring us back local here. It's coming from Tennessean.com to be specific. This is actually an issue that Sherry Voluntary and myself spoke about off air, actually, last time you were in. Headline here is Warner Music, Curb Music speak out against legislation affecting LGBT Tennesseans. That's somewhat of a frustrating article to get through. 3/4 of the article is not dedicated at all to the legislation. It's just dedicated to the reaction of the legislation, and I found myself wondering, well, what are they reacting to? I probably know what you're talking about. I just need to know specifically what you're referencing. They're referencing that piece of legislation that's going through right now. 865-888-TALK, 865-888-8255. That's the Crown Plaza call number. That's the number I want you to call to react to this story. The piece of legislation going through Tennessee right now that we are considering, what's the best way to paint this? Some on the left are saying this is going to allow religious groups to discriminate against same-sex marriage couples that want to adopt in this state. Some on the right are saying, well, if you actually read the legislation, what the legislation says is that it's going to make it so the government cannot force those organizations to do a particular thing, or it's not going to force them. They have to adhere to a particular standard. Depending on how you follow that, we'll see. Roz, what are we doing here, by the way? We're just going straight to the end? Yeah, let's go straight to the end. All right, with us going straight to the end, I may get Sherry Volunteers coming. This is the point that Sean and myself have been in somewhat of a disagreement for a little while regarding the Mueller report. I think Sean is correct that the percentage of Americans polled, actually I might poll Sherry Voluntary right here live while we're doing this, the percentage of Americans polled that actually even are concerned at all about the Mueller report or have any concern left to give, if I'm being FCC appropriate, probably know what I mean. If you have any concerns left to give regarding the Russia report, it would probably be very, very minimal. Do you have any concern left about the whole Russia thing?
I vote Harambe.
Okay.
That's my poll choice. No, I don't. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it was all a big bowl of nothing in the first place. It's done. Like, you lost. Get over it and move on. For me, this is just exactly like the birthers when Obama won. Whether you were right or not, it doesn't matter. It's done and over. And the amount of effort that it takes to fight something like that in order to get someone removed and do it all over again you can't get people to hardly go out and do anything. How are you going to get that to happen?
Yeah, exactly.
It's done. You're done, guys. You're done. Democrats, you're done. You lost. Move on.
Let me make this point one final time here. It's interesting you bring that up with the whole "you're done" thing, and this is the reason why I'm saying, yes, it is done, but unfortunately, it should have been done 18 months ago.
Absolutely.
And because it should have been done 18 months ago, I think it's still. What I'm saying is I don't think Republicans have an opportunity to put this to bed yet, because Democrats should have put this to bed almost 2 years ago, which means to me, now that it seems to be done, it's certainly not done. They're going to continue to fight for this up until 2020. We need to be ready for whatever, and you shouldn't say we on radio, but most of my audience is conservative, so what are you going to do about that? Roz, this computer good here? This is Byron York, by the way, on Levin's program. Listen to what Byron York says about this.
First of all, we've known this for quite a long time, that there was no collusion, that Mueller was not going to allege it, because we saw Mueller really didn't leak very much, but he did charge people. He indicted people, he tried them, he got their guilty pleas, and he indicted or charged big figure after big figure, Manafort, Gates, Flynn, Papadopoulos, Cohen, and others who were in the Trump circle in the campaign. And he charged him with various things, like Manafort charging him with basically not paying taxes years earlier. And the others, some he charged with lying to FBI investigators. But he never alleged that there was a conspiracy or coordination between the Trump campaign and Moscow. And you're thinking, well, if Paul Manafort, if there was this coordination and Paul Manafort wasn't involved, who was colluding here?
Now, real quick, obviously what Byron Roach is talking about is if there was a coordination, and collusion is not a legal term, we get that now with our meaning, it's conspiracy. If there was a legal conspiracy at hand, you would have to think one of the actual conspirators would be the guy that's running the campaign. That would seem to make sense, right? Well, it didn't make sense to anybody at the time, so what do we do with that? Well, this makes sense now with what Byron Rourke's about to say.
So it's something that people in the press should have been able to see this whole time. So it's not really a mistake. And I was talking to John Dowd, who is the president's lawyer, from right after the appointment of Mueller until March of 2018. And he felt that by Christmas of 2017, that Mueller had pretty much established that there was no collusion.
All right, let me stop you there. That's a big deal.
Yes.
That's over a year ago.
Correct.
Almost a year and a half ago. So why did Mueller wait?
All right, now the answer to that question is what I'm going to say right now. All right, and this is something that not just Byron York is on, Rush Limbaugh is on, all the other Republican establishments are on this same tip as well. They're all saying now that it's fairly certain, and major publications were reporting on this. Even the Washington Post at the time was reporting that the Trump administration was getting ready for this whole investigation to be wrapped up by about December of 2017. And we're talking about a year and a half ago. Sherry saying you was a classic. Are you saying in Facebook or in this whole story? Because it applies to both.
Yeah, both.
Yeah. Sherry's saying in Facebook, I see the usual cast of characters here, and it's Facebook and in this story as well. Now, what that ends up indicating to me is that even people on the left, the Mueller's own team, they would have been done with this by December 2017. By this, the underlying conspiracy charge that Mueller knew at that time, there was nothing to the underlying conspiracy charge. The answer to the question of what Mark Levin answered, and this is what Byron York goes on a little bit to say, is exactly what I've been saying since we had this Mueller report. I personally believe that Mueller was motivated. I don't know about this whole notion that Mueller is a white hat masquerading as a black hat, that he's really trying to do something to exonerate the president. I don't know if I want to buy that anymore. Mueller, I believe, had a very specific intention. His intention, I believe, was to exonerate the FBI. So, by the end of December of 2017, he realizes, oh no. Not only do I have nothing with conspiracy, if I report on this, I'm going to have to be slightly honest, and if I'm even slightly honest, what's going to end up happening is I'm giving much more evidence to a fabrication of an investigation, even as opposed to an exoneration of the president. Are you following me there? There's much more evidence in part one as to this should have never even started, as opposed to, okay, the fact that it was started, we didn't find anything, that's a good win for the president. Now, the second thing that says to me, obviously, is Democrats knew at that time, at least the Democrats in the know knew at that time, that it should have been done by the beginning of 2018. January of 2018, we should have been done with this. We're more than a year past that at this point, obviously. So if they should have been done with it back then, because the underlying charge that they were pushing for 2 years was the collusion narrative, knowing in the beginning of 2018 there was no collusion narrative, they're certainly not going to be done with it now. They've known that for over a year. Why should I expect that they would be done with something that they knew a year ago, over a year ago at this point, was completely done? Yeah. Lastly, what I want to say is if Mueller says that, hey, the reason why we didn't need to interview the president is because we had everything we needed. We had everything. We had all the evidence we needed. Well, Mueller, if you had all the evidence you needed, then why at the end of this entire report did you say, nah, I don't know. Nah, maybe you did, maybe you didn't. Maybe it doesn't exonerate him. Maybe we should leave it up to Congress. Nah, I don't know. If you had all the evidence you needed, so you didn't need to interview any more people, then you shouldn't have made the assessment at the end of, you take it either way. 7:58, hit this first break. Be right back. All right, I had to get that one more.
I was just going to say about it that they want it to be so. So they just keep saying it's so.
Yeah.
Because enough people will get confused by it. Like, there's so much rigmarole to it. So many layers, so many reports. People aren't going to read that. They're going to listen to pundits.
Yeah.
And they're just going to say it until they feel like most people or all their people believe it. I mean, it's insane.
But it sucks though, because in the meantime, what they're doing, hang on. Yeah.
People get confused by it. Like, there's so much.
It's not bad audio. In the meantime, what they're doing is destroying journalism. I mean, just absolutely. They gave a Pulitzer Prize to what? The New York Times and the Washington Post, I believe, for reporting on a story that now the special counsel, which they all which they all advocated to assign, that very special counsel said is completely debunked, and they give them Pulitzer Prizes for reporting on the debunked story now. It's
the Pulitzer Prize, the Nobel Prize. They don't mean anything anymore. It's like racism. That word doesn't mean anything. It means that we don't like you and you said something we disagree with. It doesn't mean you were actually racist. Like, it's the left tends to do that though. Use those terms so much that they lose their meaning and become void.
I just don't know what you do anymore. And it's, in my mind, it's even bigger than just this collusion story. I mean, I don't know. Think about literally anything going forward of where do you go?
I go, different places for different types of movement. I go to the Libertarian Institute. I go to fee.org. I go to Mises. I go to, what's the other one? Crap. But those places, I mean, they're a libertarian point of view, but they tend to actually try to say, Reason. I go to Reason.
Do you go to Reason? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, you have to take different sources.
Yeah.
Right. And I like Drudge Report because a lot of times he'll just have tons of stories listed there. And I go and try and sort through it and figure it out. Like, that's the thing. Most people, and that's why, I don't know. I don't really follow the news too much. I don't know everything, but what I'm interested in, you've got to go to different places and sort it out. And of course, like, I'll look at the Washington Post and the New York Times, all those things as well. But you got to piecemeal it. You have to piecemeal it. There's no one source major source anymore that you can trust. But independent media, Josh Sigurdson out of Canada, like him, you have to find independent media that you can trust. Ford Fisher, I like his work.
I'm getting afraid that Heather might be one of your people. Heather's actually dead as to what my biggest fear is, the distractions. They just want to keep us distracted while they steal our freedoms.
Absolutely.
I mean, when the Mueller report was first breaking, like the day after the Mueller report, I saw this headline that's almost to the point of what Heather's talking about, where Trump was wanting to give some medal, I don't even know what the medal was, some medal to Tiger Woods, for who God knows the reason why I want to give Tiger Woods a medal, but I thought to myself, like, really, bro? Really, like, I know Trump is a master manipulator of the media, but it's just like,
Tiger Woods?
You know what I mean?
He's kind of irrelevant now, isn't he?
Well, he just won the Masters, and it had something to do with that. I don't know what it was, but all I could think was, at the same time the Mueller report comes out, we have the other bigger story that nobody is talking about, that Trump for the second time used his veto power to shut down that House resolution that would have ended the Yemen war.
Yes, that's the
And now we're talking about Tiger Woods and Kim Kardashian. Right. Tiger Woods getting the medal and Kim Kardashian going to law school, and it's like...
That was the thing that really upset me, was that, he had the opportunity to stop our support of a terrible humanitarian crisis. Like, this is evil of epic proportions going on there. And yet, what did he do? He vetoed it. But if you say that, you're anti-Trump.
No, I know.
You're anti-Trump. Because I say he did something wrong, then all of a sudden, like, that's the people, the MAGA people, they just shut you down. Because 4D chess or whatever. Like, it's just so crazy.
Well, I've been very clear about my opinions specifically pertaining to the Yemen war, and I've been very clear also about one of the sole reasons why I supported Trump to begin with were, regardless of who was going to be a Republican, I didn't necessarily care as long as he was putting what I would consider originalist or close to textualist in the Supreme Court. That's all I really wanted. I didn't get that with Kavanaugh. I got it with Gorsuch. Okay, I'm fine. I'm going to be fairly happy, I think, with whoever they replace Ginsburg with. It's going to get better than Ginsburg as far as I'm concerned. Nevertheless, the second one was Trump was speaking very openly about being a non-interventionist, almost close to isolationism, right? And to his credit, he has been, at least by way of rhetoric, closer to that regarding Afghanistan. He apparently convinced.
I mean, I'm tired. The rhetoric is like, that's Republicans specialize in rhetoric.
Well, but here's to his credit again. He has made some policy adjustments actually regarding Syria that's actually been closer in line with the non-intervention. Now, it has been everything I wanted. But the point being is everything Trump says and part of what he does is aligning with his non-interventionist stance during the campaign. But the Yemen thing is antithetical to what he was saying during the campaign.
And obviously, what's behind it.
Exactly.
Saudi money. That's what's behind it.
Yeah.
That's what's behind it.
And I think that frustrates me more than anything.
Yeah, he's got another campaign to fund.
Yeah.
It's sick. People know it, but they look to these people, these rulers, as if they're virtuous, and they're not. They're not virtuous.
I wish Trump is the kind of guy that would just come out and say, and this would be a better response to me than anything else. Trump is the kind of guy that would come at a press conference and say, look, I got two choices here. I got back Saudi Arabia or I got backing Iran. What do you want me to do? Now, there's a third choice in the middle, just not backing either one, of course, right? But Trump's whole position is, I just put these sanctions on Iran. I'm telling the rest of the world not to buy Iranian oil. What do you want me to do? Not support Saudi Arabia on the other hand as well, too? It's a proxy war going on between those countries. I mean...
We're part of that, though. We're part of the reason there is we support both sides. It's crazy. We've supported both sides in so many places, and then we act like we don't have any onus in it when it comes to pass. But Ron Paul said something interesting lately on my friend Alan's podcast. He said the peace candidate always wins.
Is your live stream still? My live stream still going? Are you on Facebook right now?
Uh-huh.
You're still seeing it, right?
Yep. Is it down?
Well, I just got a message. John just sent me a message saying that part of your video is blocked.
Who's had a baby?
Maybe there's a blocking video.
It says the volume is too low to hear on speakers at work. Oh,
Who's
never
that?
mind. Oh, that's my brother. He's a machinist. He works in a machine shop. So.
Are you on Facebook right now? You're still seeing it, right? Well, why don't you just tell him it'd be better when we get back on air.
Grant, do you have something for securing America? Do you have something for securing America? Okay. Yeah, at.
The at symbol.
Oh, the at symbol?
Yeah. Who do you want to tag?
Somebody told me to tag yesterday. I'll try and do it if I can get the videos about today. I misunderstood the specific Facebook Live segment for securing America as opposed to a full 3-hour live video.
Yeah, well, I mean, he misunderstands a lot of things.
The Facebook is saying it's good volume there.
And to be quite honest, it's none of his business how anything works behind here. It really isn't. That's not his business. I'm gonna explain it to anybody.
It's American Next segment, right? We can do it now.
My next commercial break has that in there, so we have to do it.
All right, yeah. I got it.
So.
Oh, well, I can't do that anymore, can I? The okay sign?
It's racist now, apparently.
Yeah.
Because said,
is that racist?
I do it on
that. That's part of the Illuminati. Don't do that.
Anything.
So, I guess I'll pod this down and then do the intro. It's so weird.
No,
you come in and then say something about securing America, and then I'll do the intro. Just point at me when you're ready for me to do the intro.
Yeah, sure, that'll work.
Okay.
It's 8:08 in the morning. Welcome back to Real News, ladies and gentlemen. If you're watching on Facebook, I'm fairly certain that stream's still going. At least it is on my computer here. Let me know how the audio is. Man, Mevo updated all their stuff, and I did this yesterday right before we started the show. What is today? Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Is it? That's
Voluntary
right.
Tuesday.
That's right. Voluntary Tuesday. That's right. With Sherry Voluntary. One more time, tell me where your stuff is.
Go to Sherry Voluntary on Facebook, Sherry Voluntary Show. You can go to YouTube and look up the Sherry Voluntary Show, and all your podcatchers, SoundCloud, Stitcher, all that.
That's what I'm talking about.
Google Play.
Facebook, Real News Radio is where you find us right now, interacting with the comments there. Love to interact with those comments. I love when Sherry comes on, too, because I get, like, half of her people that indulge her and come over here. And I don't know.
They love your show. Yeah. Like, a lot of the people who come over here stay. Like, I see I see a lot of people who, even guests on my show here.
Well, they're staying for you and they're tolerating me. That's what's
every
going on.
morning they listen to you, whether I'm here or not.
That's right. I did get Kelly and Eric coming over here specifically because of you. So, anyways, this segment right now is his security segment.
Securing America. Brought to you by His Security. In God we trust. All others, we monitor.
That's what I'm talking about. His Security. In God we trust. All others we monitor. Here is the segment for today. Supreme Court, getting ready for a fight over Trump's census citizenship question. Now, what does this have to do with securing America? Let me break this down. I actually really want to get Sherry Voluntary's take on this as well. Here it is. This is coming from Reuters.com. Sitting in a working-class commercial strip in the shadows of an above-ground rail line, a group called Make the Road in New York's busiest street-level offices are easy to miss. But its mission to support and advocate for immigrants is front and center. A sign on its front door in a heavily Hispanic neighborhood of the boroughs of Queens warns law enforcement officers not to enter without a warrant. Its colorful lobby is filled with butterfly-shaped placards made for protest against the hardline immigrant policies of President Donald Trump, a fellow New Yorker, they say. Its latest fight is to contest the Trump administration's contentious plan to add a citizenship question to the 2020 census, which the group has called a racist attempt to intimidate undercount immigrants. A racist attempt to intimidate immigrants. Let me stop there, and I'll explain more why this question is so important. I'll explain more why this fits in the Securing America segment. Before I move on, though, let me get Sherry Voluntary's take, and I want to get take from a bit of the Facebook as well. Initially, from the very top, what's your consideration, without knowing anything else? I'm not sure how much you know about the whole census citizenship question. From the very top, what's your take on asking people that are in this country on a census? Was that every 10 years? Is that what we do?
Yeah,
something like that? Yeah. Right? What's your take on asking people that are in this country, and I'm careful by saying Americans, but asking people in this country as to whether or not you're a citizen?
I mean, it's a straightforward question. I don't see what's racist about it.
I don't either.
That's the thing. I mean, I'm not crazy about
xenophobic might be a better word, right?
But I mean, even like if you're counting people. Like, I'm not crazy about censuses anyways, but that's a whole nother issue. But if you're going to ask questions and count people and use it to figure out demographics, wouldn't you want to know how many people are citizens versus non-citizens? Like, wouldn't that be a good idea to know how many non-citizens are represented in this or are in this country? And like, just so you know these things?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, again, before we get into the details, I just want to clear some of these cobs out of the way. What would you do then with the contention of what this individual said? Let's say it's not necessarily racist. Racist is a very difficult idea to get you rid of.
They're throwing it in there to get people on their side.
Yeah.
Like, I want honesty. I don't care. Like, I want you to be honest about what your intentions are. If you disagree with someone, say it. Don't throw racism in there as some kind of boondoggle to
it's
throw
like
people off.
when Ilhan Omar and Alexander Cortez and that other lady that I keep forgetting her name, Tlaib, I think is her name. Every single time they say something that anybody disagrees with, it's all of a sudden you're commenting on me because I'm a colored woman.
Right.
Come on, man.
Or you're a woman, or you're a person of color, or like whatever the victim hierarchy, wherever they fit in that. That's what you're gonna. Right. You're only saying this because maybe it's because I just think you're wrong. Right. How about that?
I disagree with Bernie Sanders as much as Alexander Cortez. He's an old white guy.
Nobody's good. You're just disagreeing with him because he's an old white guy.
Yeah.
That's
right,
it.
No, we're allowed to disagree with old white guys.
Yeah, old white guys don't matter, do they?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. Bernie Sanders and Alexander Cortez are not exactly saying the same things now anymore.
No.
Bernie Sanders has been pushed out of his own progressive party.
He's starting to look like a moderate.
Yeah, he is. He sincerely is. They asked him at that town hall on Fox the other night of, hey, what's standard? What is your starting point of taxation on the top 1%? What's the top 10%? And he said 52 or 58%, which was not nearly progressive enough.
I doubt he pays that much in taxes.
I doubt he does either.
And he could always volunteer. They won't turn you down. You could write more money to the IRS, Bernie. Just so you know. You could sign some of those houses and some of those, high-end, expensive Ferraris or whatever it is he owns. He owns a bunch of cars, a bunch of houses. I don't see him signing any of that over for the greater good.
So Sherry says, look, if you're going to disagree with someone, at least just be honest with them. Don't throw out these platitudes and these immediate sort of trigger words of racist or whatever. Xenophobic would be as triggering as racist. It just doesn't make as much sense to other people. It would fit more categorically here. But then what do you do then with the contention of, okay, if we start, and understand this, Real News audience, this is not the first time in American history that either a citizenship question has been proposed or put on the census before. What would you do with the contention of, okay, well if you ask people what they're citizens and they say, no, I'm not. Now all of a sudden ICE is going to show up to your house and break the door
Right.
in.
I mean, well, I think most people are assuming if you say you're not a citizen that you're a brown person.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are plenty of. My husband is an immigrant to this country. He's a white dude. Like there are plenty of people of many nationalities, and the nation you belong to is not your race. So I don't understand how that is. It's ideologically dishonest. I hate that. It's intellectually dishonest. That's what I was looking for. I hate that. I cannot stand intellectual dishonesty.
Well, seems like some people actually even rely upon it right now. I know we're jumping all over the place, but Sharon and I were speaking before, and I was asking her. This is a totally different topic. It's just on here. What she's saying is, the New York Times and the Washington Post, I believe both of them just won Pulitzer Prizes for their coverage of the now debunked Russia collusion or Russia conspiracy theory, if you will. And I was asking Sherry, like, what do you do? What I see so problematic is not necessarily the purposeful misleading about this Russia story. It's what in the world do we do with journalism going forward?
No, their journalism and the mainstream is dead, and it has been for a long time. You have to go to independent media, and you have to piece it together. Now there are times when, like, I'll say the Washington Post hits it and does a really good job, but it's only if it doesn't conflict with their agenda. So you have to know what the agenda of the paper or the news source is in order to know how much you can trust them on any given subject. And look, they're like the politicians. Their incentive is to sell newspapers. And now that they've committed themselves to being on this anti-Trump side of this Mueller report, they're incentivized to keep going with that, just like the Democrats are incentivized to keep going with it because they've already staked their claim. And so they're going to prove it, whether it's true or not. They're just going to say it until people believe it's true, whether it's true or not.
And Richard Esparza just asked me in the Facebook here. I know people are still wondering, Mr. Henry, what does this have to do with securing America? I'm telling you, I need to lay all this out for any of this to make sense. Because you didn't believe me the first time I said this. I hope you're going to believe me now. This issue coming up in the Supreme Court, this citizenship question coming up in the Supreme Court, in my opinion, is going to be the most fundamental question that needs to be answered prior to the 2020 election, prior to the 2024 election, going forward. I don't want to hide the ball anymore. What this makes a difference in is electoral college representation. What this makes a difference in is House of Representatives representation. That's the reason why this question is being asked. Richard Esparza asked a very important question. The only thing constitutionally required for the census is the number of people in the House. That's another thing that libertarians and Republicans or conservatives in general are having to butt up against is this weird juxtaposition between... All right, hold on. So what you're saying, Mr. Henry, why this is important for securing America is because the fundamental aspect of if we have some version of a federal government, what we'd like to have is a representative republic, okay? So securing that aspect, that ideal of a representative republic is contingent upon knowing which citizens you actually represent or the number of citizens you actually represent, i.e. the operative word being citizens, okay? So this is what's ended up happening. We had this constitutional expert from California come in this program and explain this to us. These sanctuary cities are operating in such a manner of a lot of Republicans, Fox News is misleading people to think that these illegal immigrants are going to go actually cast ballots. Maybe that's happening, maybe it's not. I don't know. I don't know. The Supreme Court tends to disagree with that assessment, okay? What this constitutional expert said, it's not necessarily about illegal immigrants actually casting votes. What it is about is them being represented in that area. I've said this so many times in this program, it's worth repeating right now. Alabama, the state of Alabama, is about to lose a House seat. A federal House seat because they don't play the sanctuary city game. Think of it this way. If the city of San Francisco population rises by 1 million people over 10 years, 2 million people by 10 years, well, clearly they need more representation for those additional 2 million people. And frankly speaking, if 2 million individuals from Alabama up and move to San Francisco for some odd reason, we would say, yes, California deserves more representation than Alabama because all those Alabamans moved to California. I don't know why, but they did. Okay? Maybe Nick Saban went out there and coached at UCLA. Now all of a sudden they're getting hype about that. I don't know. They moved to California. That's the point, though. The point is this is going to dramatically change not how votes are cast, but the number of votes allowed in the Electoral College, the number of representation allowed in the House of Representatives. Now that securing America aspect, securing the fundamental aspects of our representative republic, because Alabama doesn't want to play the sanctuary city game, is put up against the conservative ideals of, constitutionally speaking, all that's required. Now, the government can ask whatever they want to. They do. They ask, have you ever filled out a census report? It's a multitude of questions.
No.
Have you?
Don't get me in
You're
trouble.
all right. Don't get in trouble. They can ask whatever they want to, but allegedly all you have to fill in, constitutionally speaking, is how many people live in your house. I want to hit this break right here. 8:19. Come back and I'll get Sherry's taking this as well. Where do we go with this? Right? Which one's more important? Which one's more important for securing America? Still going to continue the His Security segment right after this break. Be right back.
Sorry, I kind of took that over.
No,
I don't want
it's
to go
your
this
show,
far.
buddy.
All right, I gotta type a. Let me type a description real quick. What are we doing today?
It's Voluntary Tuesday. Capital T's.
Well, I put an at in front of a name.
Yeah. If it doesn't pop up, like on Facebook, it will pop up generally.
Yeah.
But sometimes it won't. Especially I find with like your show or pages of like that aren't people, it often won't pop up. So I'll put the at sign in.
Oh, okay.
And type it in there. And I'll,
Right. Do you have to put Q in the LGBT? Is that enough, or do they have a Q now? Is that?
There's a Q.
Isn't there like 20-something letters?
There's like 20. Yeah.
I'm just
I think there's more than there are in the alphabet. Citizenship question has been part of the census all the way through the 1950s.
Does it?
Yeah.
So it's part of it right now?
I don't know. It says, what's more, citizenship question was part of the census from all the way through. That doesn't really make sense, I think.
Well, I guess they had it up until 19-something, and then they stopped it.
Dropped the question in 1960.
Dropped it like a
Most
bomb.
likely because immigration rates have been so low for decades that foreign-born population shrunk to just 5.4% from 14.7 in 1910.
I'm fairly certain that's the right. Oh, we got a call. That means I'm doing something right. Or something Ray wrong. Okay. Christine Dean is who I'm supposed to tag, and I'm really hoping this is the right person.
I guess you'll find out.
I can only tag people that follow Real News, though, right?
I think so.
You're getting
Well, it
tagged,
should
Christine.
be.
Man, I gotta figure out how to do all these. Do you tag your YouTube videos with like searchable thing? Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I tried to, but I never know if I'm doing it right.
Do it.
Okay, now I get a video description. We are in the business. The description's terrible too. Alright, whatever.
Dookie is another word. What was that word? No, not dookie.
euphemism for doo-doo.
Yeah.
It was, I don't remember.
Dropping bombs?
I think it was dropping bombs. Yeah.
I'd rather drop those bombs than the real ones.
Good stuff.
Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Real News, broadcasting live from FMT Insurance Studios. If you have a comment on anything we're talking about, check out our Facebook here. Just type in Real News Radio to your Facebook search bar. A couple questions here. Or just call this number, 865-888-TALK, 865-888-8255. This segment here, Securing America, sponsored by His Security. Sponsored by His Security. The website is just hissecurity.com, by the way. Fairly easy to get to. Norm says in Facebook, what agency enforces census answers? Who administers fines for falsely answering? What keeps a non-citizen from just answering falsely on a census? Now, again, I will say, I've dealt with this personally before. Just when I was a very young, somewhat green political guy, and at the time was really hard on this libertarian bent, or what I thought was...
What you thought was, yeah. It's funny you say you were a young guy. Like, okay.
I'm talking young guy when I was first married to my wife, 22 years old, and somebody comes to my house when I'm at work, and she sends me a text saying, hey, these people here talking about the census stuff, and I said, oh, get them! Just tell them all we have to do is respond how many people are in the house, and apparently it worked. So I don't know if that answers your question, Norm, of what agency enforces the answers, who administers fines.
I think he's saying if they lie.
Yeah.
If someone lies, who's going to come and...
Well, here's the way that I would understand that this would work out theoretically, and I may be wrong here, but if you just refuse to answer that citizenship question, I suppose you may just not be counted as a citizen. And if you do try and answer it, and there's not some way to verify that you're a citizen, then they're not going to count you as a citizen. Yeah. I don't. What do you do? What do you write your social security number down? I don't know what you do.
I'm not giving. I mean, yeah. Never mind. I just. Right. They've already got it. But yeah. What do you do with people who are not like? Those questions are oversimplified because who is just Hispanic or who is just white or who is just black? Like, I'm more than one thing. Most people are more than one thing. So what do I put? Do I put I'm native on there because I'm part native? Do I put I'm white? Like, what do you do? And I think the problem with census is that they want these answers for social programs. And it's the money that they want to allocate to that. I think it's less about what they're arguing about it is. I think they want it because that's what they use it for, these social programs. We have X number of X people in the country, and they need our X dollars. Like, it's always a way to spend more money. And then, two, another point that you brought up, I think this is also why the Electoral College is important. When you were talking about the numbers, something triggered that in my mind, but most people don't understand why. Oh, you were saying how the representation is tied to that. Well, this is also why the Electoral College is really important because, as you see right now, people want to know where, the most Hispanics are, so they can go hit that target demographic and spend the least money doing that and hit the most people. Well, the Electoral College, it would be the same, where your politicians who are running to rule you for that office will only go to the major cities.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
Like it will diminish the say and the reach that people in regular middle America have. You have like 4 or 6 cities that they will go to, and that's it.
Have any of y'all ever been to Kansas? Or anybody ever been to the middle of this country?
I have.
Have you?
Yeah.
Back me up on this, and maybe you maybe been to a different place than me. It's a different world out there.
It's
like a different country. And the point I'm making is, and I think this is why it fits so well with the Securing America, hissecurity.com segment, is America is specifically designed. Do y'all realize how big this country is?
300 million.
And surface area alone,
huge.
We are the largest habitable country in the world. Now, what I mean by that is you got Russia first, then Canada, then America. But as far as regions that people can actually live in, America is the largest habitable surface area in the entire world.
Yeah.
Kansas is a totally different country. in my opinion, people are strange out there.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense to me. It literally is like I'm going into a different country. It's a different culture. It's a different atmosphere. Stuff is laid back. The people are awesome. They're generally nice. It's not like the North. And that's part of the reason I think what you're saying is our representative republic is not like the democracies of the rest of the world. We set up the electoral college system so that you can have a voice.
Right.
I don't know. In some sense, it's at least the best option we have up until, everybody starts to get on this voluntary train to just do it for themselves. But back to the issue at hand.
Back to reality of what we actually have. I mean, look, I don't love the system, but if you're going to have one, the electoral college is necessary. And people who walk around saying, why can't we just have a vote and every vote counts? Like that, they are so ignorant. It's incredible. Like before you form an opinion and say that something like the Electoral College is stupid, why not do just read a couple articles?
Yeah, right.
Just do a little bit of research and you'll get to the point. It doesn't take long to figure out why that's important.
I personally think it should be mandatory reading. I don't know in high school or grade school when people should do this, but all of the Federalists and all of the Anti-Federalist papers, I'm not saying I agree with all. I'm not advocating one towards the other. All I'm advocating is just reading through all of them. It doesn't take you all that long. The only reason being is we've had a lot of these arguments before by people that are much smarter than me. People that are much smarter than anybody running this country right now. We've had all of these arguments before.
When people reference the founding fathers, the founders often, they talk about them as if they were all of one opinion. And they all agreed and came to this great, no, they fought worse than cats and dogs. Yeah. They fought terribly. And the stakes were high. So
we had a senator that was beaten with a cane on the Senate floor. We had a previous vice president that was shot dead in a duel.
Yeah.
Because of political disagreements.
Yeah. I mean, this, the people are very ignorant when it comes to what the founders, who they actually were. Like, they look at them sort of as demigods. And granted, they were brilliant, and they said a lot of really wonderful things that I really appreciate. But that doesn't mean everything they said was right, and it certainly doesn't mean that they were of the same opinion.
No, and it doesn't mean also that everything that we eventually came to a general consensus upon at the time means that it necessarily fits now. Who was it? Right. Someone tell me on Facebook, please. I know I'm going to get this wrong, so I'm clearing it ahead of time, but it was Jefferson or somebody that advocated for a position of every 27 years, every generation or something.
Every 20 years.
Reconsider the Constitution itself, right?
Because if you're going to say it's a social contract, right, what do you have to have? You're a lawyer. What do you have to have a contract? A meeting of the minds, right? Yeah. You have to have a meeting of the minds. My mind has not been met.
Right.
You don't have my, my permission.
It's because for such a long time, leadership has perverted the system in such a manner that made sense for them. The basic foundations, the mechanisms of the Constitution itself, in my opinion, fundamentally work. The way for amendments, the amendment process itself, the legislature actually trying to do their job. All this, guys, don't get me started on the Commerce Clause.
Clause. I was going to say, that's where,
all this stuff got thrown out the window at some point.
Centralized power always does that because what do I always say? Life is about incentives, right? And when you centralize power, the whole point of the states was to decentralize power because they understood that that's a bad thing. So when they centralized the power, it started to go downhill from that because that's always the way centralized power goes.
And this is yet another reason to advocate for the 10th Amendment of what I just said. Go to Kansas, it's going to be a different world. Good Lord, go to California, you would swear it's a different...
it's another planet.
Everybody in Tennessee agrees it's a totally different planet, is it not? But that's a reason to say, let Californians live how they want to. Let Tennesseans live how they want to. There's a couple things that we should have general agreement upon. Aside from that, you do you and let me do me, right?
Yeah. I mean, the states... subsidiarity is a thing. That's a good thing, and that means the small governance of areas by those people, and that's what the republic was supposed to be, right? A representation of the people. There's no way that that people represent 300 million people in the country, that one guy can do that, or it's just if you look just from a constitutional perspective, it was never supposed to have the federal part of it was never supposed to have the kind of power that it has now.
And that's why I think this segment today, this Tuesday, which is today, this plan, Trump's plan for asking the census citizenship question, that plan's legality will be tested today in oral arguments before the U.S. Supreme Court. 5-4 conservative split right now. They have already pushed John Roberts to make these oral arguments available ahead of time. He has already denied that request. Occasionally they will grant that request. Obamacare they did and a few other issues. This one in particular, they say, say, nah, we're holding off for a little bit. Oye.org, I believe, is the best place to go check this out. Oyez.org. Oyez.org, one of my favorite places to listen to. They put all the oral arguments up there. They have case briefs for all this stuff. I think they have even some of the documentation, the motions themselves. Really interesting stuff if you're into that. Anyways, probably in the Securing America segment today, unless you have an opinion on it, come back. I think what I want to come back with, Sherry, is this Tennessee bill. Yeah? Regarding the adoption stuff? Sure. Should be interesting. 8:34, be right back.
This is a cool site. People who appeal to legality as to what's right. It's amazing because they said Obamacare was right too. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, people
Thomas
are
Jefferson,
just...
Ray is saying Thomas Jefferson, every 19 years the Constitution is to be opened and rewritten.
Was it Jefferson? Did he say that? 19 years?
That's what Ray is saying. Yeah.
Oh, Ray's saying that. Oh. Not that I don't take you at your word, Ray. I just thought we had, I guess I could just Google it. I know somebody's claimed that, right? But it does make sense if you look at the way the Constitution was formed. And they basically took the Articles of Confederation, and the United States citizens gave them allowance to kind of tweak. The Constitution is basically like Recode Knoxville, all right? The citizens, I'm serious though, that's a great analogy. The citizens gave their leadership an allowance to kind of tweak and kind of change, and you ended up with Recode Knoxville. You ended up with an entirely new contract that had nothing to do with...
Right, well, that's part of the problem is that, delegated powers, like people who often get, like, I want people to really understand that states have no rights. That's a really important thing to understand. There is no such thing as states' right. There's delegated powers. And it's really important because you have to understand why the powers are delegated by you. Mm-hmm. And they should not have any power to do anything that you cannot do. So if I cannot go into my friend Grant's wallet and take money, neither should they be able to do that.
Right.
There are so many, I can't make you go to war. They shouldn't be able to do that either. They're delegated powers. And that's when you say states' rights, people get confused and they think that these entities that are states have rights. They do not. They have delegated powers, and that comes from individuals.
I tell you, if somebody came out and pushed two things right now, as a presidential candidate, primarily as a legislator, because they're the ones that should be doing something about it. This is why I like Frank Nicely, for no other reason. If you come out and tell me you want to repeal the 17th, and you're making a hard push for reaffirming the 10th, I'm like, yep. Yeah. I don't care what else your stance is, because those two things, in my opinion, would take care of a lot of underlying issues. Repeal the 17th, let the state actually have a voice, right? Because it used to be this triangle thing of the people had a voice, the state had a voice, and the federal government had a voice. This beautiful sort of triangle that was mimicking the triangle of the federal government.
Where the people's voice is supposed to be the state, like the small s state, like the state of Tennessee. That's the delegated powers. And then the delegated powers were even more to the federal. That's why the federal government is supposed to have less power than everyone else, because it's the last in the line, not the first. The individual is supposed to have the most power. But the way it is right now, it's top down. The feds have the most power. And they just run rampant over everybody else.
Honestly,
Waco's 26 years old, speaking of running rampant.
Is it really?
This year just
Seriously?
happened, like the 19th was the anniversary of this.
We had some guy call in one time. I don't remember what we were talking about. It's totally different topic too, but I don't remember what. I think it was Conspiracy Theory Thursday for something. And he said that he was working with, I want to say I don't know, some federal government. Anyways, the point being is they had members of the DEA and who the firearms tobacco people?
ATF.
ATF, right? So they had DEA and ATF that came on the property. He said he was in somewhere in California, and they rolled up with like 3 or 4 semi-trucks full of stuff. And it was unrelated to what they were doing on this site. He was working with energy production, or I don't know, whatever it was. But they had a bunch of people show up on this site, and they were hanging out with them for 2-3 solid weeks where they were just running their drills. And they eventually said, like, hey, man, what's, they're drinking beers, cooking steaks, all this stuff, just guys, dudes being dudes type stuff. And the guy asked, man, what's in all these cement trucks, you guys? Like, you want to see, buddy? He's like, yeah. Open up the cement trucks, and it's like Blackwater on steroids, right? It's like drones and snipers and like caches of weapons and just listening technology, all this stuff you would think. And they asked him, bro, what are you doing here? What drills are you running, especially here in America? And his response, so this guy says, from an ATF agent is, oh, we want to make sure we never have another Waco again. And I was like, dude, because what that says to me is, Not that we're going to make sure that no one ever holds people hostage, or it says to me that we want to make sure an individual citizen never has a stockpile of that many weapons again.
And almost everything about Waco is a lie.
Mm.
And even the reports after have said that the federal agencies basically lied.
They dropped all the charges against those 2 people. They dropped 2 charges of killing federal agents. You never do that.
Yeah, because everything was a lie. One of the things that people don't know either is that not only there are like, what do they call them, explosive munitions in all the places the fires started.
Oh, really?
Yes. And then when they were running out the back, people running out the back, ATF agents, FBI agents, and British agents. There was a British, some kind of British service thing over here training. They shot those people
in the back,
dead, as they're trying to escape a burning building. Everything they did was a lie. This is you had these people. They have a weird religion. Okay, it's a small religion. That doesn't mean that they're a terrible cult. There was never any. Even the Texas Department of Children and Family Services had interviewed or already researched and said there's no basis for any of this.
We're gonna have a Jones Den or something, right?
The thing is that you had someone who was a disgruntled ex-person, ex-follower. Are we back?
Yeah.
Record that. That was really. We could do it again.
Yeah, you want to?
Do wop. Do. What about one of those 90s songs? Shaoom. I really thought music would kick in by now.
Yeah.
This was all our fault. What just happened?
Sorry, Facebook. This is definitely going to get me kicked off.
What?
I'm talking to Facebook. I'd love to play this song more, but...
A recent publication I was reading came out and said it took a poll that this is the most recognized drum solo of all time. I would tend to agree. It's a single bar. Do 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 do. I don't necessarily consider it a drum solo, but fine, whatever.
I think it's amazing, and we've already had this conversation before, that whenever I play that song, if you don't do the air drums when that part comes on, you're not real.
You're a monster.
You're not real.
You're a monster.
Yeah.
Nothing can move you.
Yes, just put him in a mental hospital now and be done with it. For real.
I will say my personal opinion, Phil Collins, one of the most brilliant drummers of all time. I'm not talking as far as sort of technical virtuosity, if you will, but his ability to construct something, I was like a composer almost. The guy was brilliant. But
he gets so much hate. I don't get it. I like good old Phil.
Yeah.
What's the matter with Phil?
I got no problem if you want to come in here and crack on Ringo Starr as being a terrible drummer. I will support you all day long, but don't talk bad about my boy Phil. Hey, let's go to Stimpy on the Crown Plaza call number before I switch topics. I'm not sure what he's wanting to bring up. Stimpy, thanks for hanging on here. By the way, if you have an opinion, 865-888-TALK, 865-888-8255. Stimpy, what's on your mind?
Opinions don't matter. Oh, why are you going with opinions? Where you guys were talking about how many people there are that are citizens of the United States. I've touched on this a little bit, but I think both of you would probably appreciate this. Now, this was, I actually found U.S. cities home to 62.7 of population, but comprise of 3.5% of land area for the United States. That is from March 4th of 2015. We only populate 3.5% of the over 3 billion acres of land in the United States. And this is because I've been trying to get into this a little bit on the air, but it's where you start breaking down all of these different layers that are within this. It's the Bureau of Land Management. the Fishing and Wildlife Federation. It comes down to all of this stuff.
By the way, Stimpy,
their
I just want to clarify, man. I wasn't laughing at you. Just for when you said Bureau of Land Management, I was laughing at Sherry's reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
I used to live in Colorado. I know all about when I hear BLM. I don't think Black Lives Matter. I think Bureau of Land Management.
Sorry, Stimpy. I just didn't want the audience to think I was laughing at you. I love Sherry's response. Go ahead, buddy.
Oh, you can laugh at me anyway. I love you guys. I'll admit I make a lot of mistakes, and I welcome you to actually challenge me if I mess up, because, I mean, that is the opportunity for us to learn. When you find out that you are mistaken, that is that opportunity to find out where you are mistaken at and to expand your belief system and to challenge it. The whole point is that we have to challenge daily what our belief systems are. And it's just everything that we're being taught, it's coming from somewhere else, and we're not allowed to explore and discover our own answers anymore.
And I hate to push it. I hate to push it too much here, Stimpy. But just for me, and possibly because I'm confused, so I would think that not confused, but I need to connect the dots. So I presume that some of the audience needs to connect the dots as well. Tie this together for me if you can, as far as how the Bureau of Land Management, the lack of 3% of the population takes up the land that we actually have here, and the census citizenship question that we were talking about before. Does that all tie together somehow?
It does, because I wonder if I'm going to have to see if I still have it on my phone, because when I was breaking down the number of how many acres are for what in within each category, I don't remember if you remember much of that, but it was so many. I think it was like 700 million acres are actually utilized by the government for fracking and mining operations.
Oh.
Which there's actually more land that was for the government use by far. And because it's when you actually start looking into, because again, and this is what we need to understand, according to our Constitution, our government, that's local and federal, shall possess or hold no land.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not that hard to actually look into it if you read the Constitution. It kind of states that. And because they understood that land is the biggest asset that any person could ever hold.
Yeah, well, that's irrefutable there.
I was just looking up the statistic, and it's 28% of the total land area is what the United States government owns, in harsh quotes. Yeah. It also gives them an incentive to fight against the people. If they're fighting for their own land rights, their own private property rights, then they can't represent people in their private property rights. It gives them the conflict of interest. I mean, it makes complete sense. The United States government was never supposed to own land.
Yes, and now the thing is that it's when you start getting into the layers, because look up the percentage of land that the Bureau of Land Management actually controls, and then add that to the amount of land that the federal government owns.
Yes.
Because that is where it is no longer this little 28%. Because when you start looking into this, and then you see, because when we opened up those gates in, what was it, the 1700s, and bring me, you're hungry, you're tired, you're poor, people were coming in. And how that actually operated is that you had to reside on that land for 7 years. And after that 7 years, you were actually allowed to purchase that land. I want to think it was 1.5 gold pieces for, it was what, something like 160 acres. It was a ton of land back in the day. But that was when, at a point in time when we actually utilized land patents. And then as the years progress, that's when you start seeing a color of trust.
Hey, Stimpy, let me ask you real quick, man. I hate to cut you off there. I'm only doing this because I wanted this follow-up question, and we only have about 60 seconds left. Is Warren Buffett, not Warren Buffett, Ted Turner, right? The guy, TNT, all that nonsense. Yeah. I think, someone might tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's the largest private landowner in America right now. What would you do with the notion, he's got all these buffalo farms and stuff, right? I mean, I think he owns like 3 full states worth of I'm exaggerating slightly, but he owns a lot of land. Anyway, the point being is, what would you do with the notion that someone says, if you tried to actually implement this right now, and someone made a hard push for what I would say, if you have a legislator comes out right now, someone running for office, and to me and says, let's repeal the 17th, let's make a hard push for the 10th, and maybe if you want to add to this right now, let's actually give the land back to the people. I don't care what the rest of your policies are. Most of the other policies are going to take care of itself if you do that for me. Take care of the 4th. Repeal the 17th, push back, give me more of the 10th back, and get the land back to the people. I literally don't care what else you do. With that being said, though, what would you do with the notion of, okay, well, let's say that we want to take the federal government back and give it back to the people. Inevitably, what's going to end up happening is you have 3 or 4 Ted Turners out there. You're going to have Mark Zuckerberg, Ted Turner, and Warren Buffett that own they own the entire United States.
I'm not concerned about private people owning land. I'm concerned about the United States government owning it. Like, that's, if you look at the map on Wikipedia for the federal lands, you'll see that almost all of Alaska and almost all of the West is owned by the federal government. Like, it's incredible, or run or managed by, they call it managing it. And I tell you what.
Yeah, we need managing because we don't know any better.
Yes, the Bureau of Land Management is a terrible thing out there. People hate it. I mean, I'm telling you, I lived out in western Colorado, and there's a lot of land out there that people can use for different uses, and they buttress up against private property. Well, there is no private property in the United States, right? Because nobody really owns their land.
Exactly. Well, actually, there is the one small city out of Texas, and I wish I could remember the name of the city. They have completely eliminated all taxes for the entire city out of Texas.
That's
and
awesome.
They're flourishing. They're doing fantastic. Their economy is booming and everything else, but yet we don't want to address that on the media because that's dangerous right there. But, I mean, one of the biggest issues that I'm actually seeing is when you allow that government to have any involvement when it comes down to land management, when it comes down to business, because a very good example is that when you start looking at these very, very large corporations, they start getting money from the government for, they'll do jobs for the military. Oh, God, you guys need food. Well, it just so happens we have a food production facility. So we'll go and sell you for so many billions of dollars. Well, that's part of it. The other part that you need to start looking into is when it comes down to selling your shares and trades on the open market, because those people are investors, and first and foremost, you're always going to be looking after their best interest instead of the best interest of your product and its quality.
Stimpy, I'm going to have to stop it right there. Unfortunately, man, we're going to hit this break, buddy. But
yeah, I get carried away. You gotta forget.
No, we love you getting carried away.
I love Stimpy.
Yeah,
Let me just say.
Stimpy's good people, but plus I love when he flies at 30,000 feet, man. He needs about 2 hours to connect all of us for us. Stimpy, always appreciate hearing from you, buddy. Great comments as always. We'll talk to you soon.
Yes, and Roz was telling me some hate speech about Roz, but not Roz, but Sherry. Sherry, you keep coming back. I love listening to you talk. You are a firecracker, and the stuff you bring to the table is fantastic.
Thank you.
I appreciate that, Stimpy. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Hey, 8:51, hit this break. Be right back.
It was five cities in Maine eliminated property taxes.
Really? All together? Are they just running sales tax alone? What are they doing?
Yes.
Are they just not having any... At some point, you just need to pay for, like, simple police and fire departments, I guess, right? Is that better?
Yeah, and people would never do that voluntarily. It's so silly. If it's that much of a need, people will pay for it. If people don't want it, they won't pay for it. It must not be a need.
Yeah, that's true. You and I always end up disagreeing about that, though. I've always said Magnolia, you're going to have stuff running wild, whereas in West Knoxville or whatever, you're going to have khaki
You
and
say
tight
that
there.
based on the system we have that has incentivized people to behave in a certain way. When there's radical personal responsibility, I guarantee you people will behave a lot differently.
Do you think so, really?
Absolutely. If there's no social safety net for them to fall back on, you won't have people on generational welfare because there won't be welfare. So this is the thing. I know I'm learning it from raising kids. You don't make people responsible by giving them no responsibility. That's how you get entitled people, giving them no responsibility. That's what we get now with all the social programs is I'm not responsible. The teachers, they need to be teaching my kids that no responsibility on my part, right? the government, there ought to be a law, no responsibility on my part. People don't even talk to their neighbors anymore when their neighbors do something they don't like, or letting their grass grow too long. They go to the city.
They do that to me.
They call the police on people for things they should walk over and be neighborly. That is personal responsibility. That's radical personal responsibility, that you have the responsibility to walk to your neighbor and say, hey, what you're doing is affecting me and the enjoyment of my property. Can we work something out?
Yeah.
But this is what you've got. You've got a whole system that has incentivized people to go to the authority every time they need something instead of dealing with each other. And that makes them less responsible, not more. It makes things worse, not better.
Actually, funny story about that. The first house that I lived in Louisville, Kentucky, was me, and it's right before I got married for, I don't know, about 7-8 months before I got married. Me and 3 or 4 other dudes lived in this house, and nobody around us had a lawnmower because they all had like dirt yards. It was not exactly the nicest place that we were ever living, right?
No.
But my front yard, they redone or whatever, and built the house back up, flipped it basically, and it had full on grass and everything. Well, we didn't have a chance to cut it for, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 months. We were all in school at the time, and just like you said, I saw this guy coming walking through my yard one morning with a yardstick, like measuring stuff, and I wasn't mad about it. I just went to ask him. I was like, hey, man, what's going on? He's like, oh, your neighbor across the street wanted me to cite you for your grass too high. And I was like, my grass too high? That's a thing? What are you talking about? Hey, 8:54 in the morning. News. David's making interesting comments on Facebook here. David, if you're new with us here, I have a policy of not reading people's last names unless you give me opportunities to. David says exactly. You tax what you want to suppress. You subsidize what you want more of. Richard just sent me, I think, the same article you were looking at. There are 5 cities that don't have property tax anymore or something?
In Maine, I think it said Maine. I hadn't had the chance to read it. Yeah, it says...
Richard just sent me this one as well, too. The Texas city without property taxes, with no city property taxes, Stafford. There you go. Stafford has flourished as an example for other cities.
Yeah.
What do they do? Is it just straight sales tax? I guess I could read this article, but...
You don't have to have taxes.
Yes, that's probably a better answer. You don't have to have taxes, right?
Well, people think, they think there's only 2 options, right? Tax or whatever, sales tax or property tax. There are other ways to do things.
So here's the first paragraph. As the legislature considers 2 landmark property tax reform proposals, local officials and taxpayer-funded lobbyists are scurrying around the Capitol, most in opposition to the 2.5% limit on property tax increase found within the Senate bill and House Bill 2. One city, however, has done away with property taxes entirely. Instead of opposing reform, local officials should look to Stafford. Let's see. A city of about 20,000 people, they eliminated property taxes more than 20 years ago. For real? That's one of the biggest parts of the story there. Look, it'd be one thing if they did this 6 months ago. They're thriving in 6 months. Well, all right, fine. Give me a track record of how long you're thriving. 20 years. When was this written? Hang on. All right, this is February 20th of this year. So year 2000?
Yeah.
1999, they've been doing it without property taxes, and it seems like they're doing just fine. That's crazy. Now, I would wonder, is there a threshold for population that this no longer makes sense? I mean, if we're talking...
That's why subsidiarity is a thing, right? That's why the states are supposed to be small and numerous.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
A totally different conversation here. I just want to tease this, and I'm not necessarily going to cover this in the 9 o'clock hour unless y'all really want to get into it. Very interesting story someone brought to me recently. I'm not going to say who. Had a medical procedure done. Prior to the medical procedure done, needed to get CT or MRI. I'm pretty sure it was an MRI, setting up the medical procedure. Now they went to a particular place, this particular place entitled Tenova. Tenova, for legal reasons, this is my opinion. You know what I'm talking about. Tenova quotes this individual $960 for an MRI. This individual, 2 weeks after the MRI is done, receives a bill for $11,500. My question to the Real News audience is, have you heard about this happening? Is this a thing that you personally dealt with? Is this something that Tenova in general does to people? I've seen the paperwork myself. They provided a good faith estimate, citing exactly what they were going to charge, $900 and some. After the fact now comes back with, what is that, 11 times more?
Yeah, to be fair, though, have has he gotten, like, did he contact them and say, is this a mistake? Have they?
Mm-hmm.
So it's been like
appeals process, the whole deal, went through all this
Wow.
stuff. The best they can tell this individual is, well, you may have been out of network, and frankly, technically speaking, legally speaking, we can charge you whatever we want to as long as we're out of network because.
I think it's your responsibility to know your. I think that's the law. It's like you're the one responsible to know what your insurance will cover, not the like people leave it up to their doctors and whatever. But
That's one of the questions I want to come back with
Yeah.
it though, because speaking as far as basic contract law is concerned, if someone gives you a good faith estimate quote
Right.
and then charges you 11 times more after
That's
the fact,
not good faith.
would you consider that to be an unconscionable contract? Would you consider that to be some type of fraudulent inducement even? I don't know. 8:58, hit this break. Be right back.
Yeah, I figured I might get in trouble with that story, but whatever.
What?
I figured I might get in trouble with that story, but the person that brought it to me said the only way apparently, like NPR does coverage on this type of stuff all the time,
Yeah.
and they even say on their own program the only way anything ever gets taken care of with this stuff is
Public shame.
somebody in the media has to deal with it, and
That's why the
NPR.
left uses that.
Yeah.
That's why they want
Yeah.
to be a racist. It's a shaming technique.
Even NPR said it, which I have a tendency to agree with, saying this issue of the incredible overcharging for out-of-network stuff is one of the primary issues that Republicans have to deal with that destroys their argument on privatized healthcare. And if they could deal with it feels like con men in the insurance game that you have to go through to get medical procedures done. It's not on the doctors; they don't know what's going on.
And the thing is that the laws, this free, harsh quotes, healthcare, that incentivizes insurance companies to do stuff like that because they're not making any money if they can't. The prices
Yeah.
in fixed pricing, it's divorced from the market.
Yeah.
So they end up spending way more because nobody knows what the prices are.
Well,
This
exactly.
is what happens in communist countries all the time. That's why you end up with shortages because nobody knows. The market is an indicator of how many resources there are.
It's also one of my primary reasons why I'd like to see some idea of tort reform.
Yes. Oh gosh, that's very needed.
Hey, Facebook, I'm gonna take a little boys' room break. For those that are new here, I usually leave you something a bit more interesting than the commercial breaks. Let's do Alan Watts. What happens if you stop talking to yourself all the time? Why not?
I love Alan Watts.
What doesn't exist in the real world?
Real well.
Now, it's amazing what doesn't exist in the real world. For example, in the real world, there aren't any things, nor are there any events. That doesn't mean to say that the real world is a perfectly featureless blank. It means that it is a marvelous system of wiggles
I was with the students though.
in which we descry things and events in the same way as we would project images on a Rorschach blot or pick out particular groups of stars in the sky and call them constellations as if they were separate groups of stars. Well, they're groups of stars in the mind's eye, in our system of concepts. They are not out there as constellations already grouped in the sky. And meditation is the way in which we come to feel our basic inseparability from the whole universe. And what that requires is that we shut up. That is to say, that we become interiorly silent and cease from the interminable chatter that goes on inside our skulls. Because you see, most of us think compulsively all the time. That is to say, we talk to ourselves. I remember when I was a boy, we had a common saying, talking to yourself is the first sign of madness. Now, obviously, if I talk all the time, I don't hear what anyone else has to say. And so in exactly the same way, if I think all the time, that is to say, if I talk to myself all the time, I don't have anything to think about except thoughts. And therefore I'm living entirely in the world of symbols, and I'm never in relationship with reality. All right, now that's the first basic reason for meditation. But there is another sense, and this is going to be a little bit more difficult to understand, why we could say that meditation doesn't have a reason or doesn't have a purpose. And in this respect, it's unlike almost all other things that we do, except perhaps making music and dancing. Because when we make music, we don't do it in order to reach a certain point, such as the end of the composition. If that were the purpose of music, to get to the end of the piece, then obviously the fastest players would be the best. And so likewise, when we are dancing, we are not aiming to arrive at a particular place on the floor, as we would be if we were taking a journey. When we dance, the journey itself is the point. When we play music, the playing itself is the point. And exactly the same thing is true in meditation. Meditation is the discovery that the point of life is always arrived at in the immediate moment. And therefore, if you meditate for an ulterior motive, that is to say, to improve your mind, to improve your character, to be more efficient in life, you've got your eye on the future and you are not meditating. Because the future is a concept. It doesn't exist. As the proverb says, tomorrow never comes. There is no such thing as tomorrow. There never will be. Because time is always now. And that's one of the things we discover when we stop talking to ourselves and stop thinking. We find there is only a present, only an eternal now. So it's funny then, isn't it, that one meditates for no reason at all, except we could say for the enjoyment of it. And here I would interpose the essential principle that meditation is supposed to be fun. It's not something you do as a grim duty. The trouble with religion, as we know it, is that it is so mixed up with grim duties. We do it because it's good for you. It's a kind of self-punishment. Well, meditation, when correctly done, has nothing to do with all that. It's a kind of digging the present. It's a kind of grooving with the eternal now. And brings us into a state of peace where we can understand that the point of life, the place where it's at, is simply here and now. The easiest way to get into the meditative state is to begin by listening. If you simply close your eyes and allow yourself to hear all the sounds that are going on around you, just listen to the general hum and buzz of the world as if you were listening to music. Don't try to identify the sounds you're hearing.
Echo chamber at the left.
Yeah.
We have a major
Don't
problem
put
with that,
names
right?
on them.
The right are worst about it, and this is why I say
Simply
I think the right is
allow
worst about it
them to
because
play with
they
your
believe-
eardrums.
They love the rhetoric of freedom, and they love to talk about how everybody else is something else, but they're the worst. Like, that makes you worse, in my opinion, because you're a hypocrite.
Right.
And then to talk about freedom and talk the rhetoric, but then never want to walk it.
Mhm.
Every time anybody wants to do anything, as long as they have a little, R by their name, then we're supposed to make excuses for them.
And that's why, hang on. Kevin, you can't hear anything? You can hear something now. Anyways, I don't know who, like Dave Rubin, for example. He's one of these guys that finally woke up and recognized the hypocrisy of his own party and tries to get away with that, away from that. I'm not sure who the right's version of that is yet.
Libertarian.
Possibly, right? No, but I mean, I don't know the representative I can go to, or
Yeah,
It's not
Justin
necessarily
Amash,
Jordan.
maybe?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the problem. There's not anybody on the right. Because this is what happens. They shut them down so fast.
I don't know if it's I'm trying to figure out who would be those people that are relegated to the intellectual dark web. Okay, Sam Harris is another example of those that he's not even trying to be distancing himself from his own party. He's just inadvertently done that. Maybe a Jordan Peterson, but not even necessarily him.
But yeah, he's not a political, like he doesn't, it touches politics,
Right.
what he says, but
Right.
he doesn't try to be political.
Nine 9:08 in the morning. Sorry, I'm chuckling at a Facebook comment here from our buddy Ray. I'm not even sure what
I don't know
saying.
either. I don't know.
That's part of the problem when we take these breaks during the time off. Facebook keeps going. Ray said something to the effect of, how do I identify the sound of flatulence? I can smell it. Courtesy, Mr. Oh, because I took a bathroom break. Oh, okay. I guess. I don't know, Ray. I don't know. Anyways, this is Real News, broadcasting live from the FMT and CERN studios. Our buddy Sharon Voluntary here. And by Sharon, I meant Sherry. Sherry's Voluntary.
We've been friends for how long now, Mr. Henry?
Well, your close friends call you Sharon, you know? That's what
Yeah, they call me out my name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Grant, your close friends call you Brian, right? No, they don't. Anyways, hey, I could tell them where they can find your stuff and spell Sherry, because it's spelled in multiple ways,
it's
right?
spelled the right way, which is Sherry. And Voluntary. You can go to Facebook, The Sherry Voluntary Show. Also, Little L Productions. Check out the other great shows that are offered there. I'm now on Liberty Radio Network, LRN, so that's cool. I'm really excited about that. And Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud, TuneIn. Like you can even, I think TuneIn is the one where on the Google Home device you can say, hey, play Sherry Voluntary and the Sherry Voluntary Show, and it'll play my show.
Hey, let's mess with people right now. Okay, Google. Hi, Siri. What's the other one? Alexa.
Alexa. Play Air Supply, Lost in Love.
Yes. Somebody's listening on their smartphone right now. No! Stop that.
Somebody's cursing me.
Yeah, that's right. What's a terrible song? Alexa, play If You Want to Be My Lover.
Actually, that is
by Spice Girls.
Zig a Zig.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really hope that somebody's phone is playing Spice Girls right now.
I hope they're sitting in a meeting.
Yeah, I would love that. Sitting at work. No, stop this. Anyways, if you have a comment on what we're talking about today, 865-888-TALK, 865-888-8255. Before I go to Lynch, let me throw out there one more time. I'm going to cover this story tomorrow. I think it might fit with tomorrow, the guest we have on. I don't know if it's confirmed yet, so I don't want to tease it too much. But this whole idea with... have you ever been quoted something by a medical provider, or rather in this case, an insurance company? The individual I know was quoted around $900, $950 for an MRI. The good faith quote, and I say good faith quote, it's a specific legal term. It was on the actual description of the quote itself, saying $950 for the MRI. And even in the quote, it said it could potentially be slightly higher than that as a good faith quote. And good faith means a reasonable estimate. Reasonable estimate should probably mean the same thing in legalese as it does to the average common man, which I think it does. The common man would understand a reasonable estimate meaning, okay, if you quote me $1,000, I wouldn't expect it to be $11,000.
Right. There's no point in giving an estimate.
Right.
If it's that different, like an estimate is supposed to help the person prepare for the costs.
Right.
So, like, that is just... I mean, to me, that's sort of unconscionable. You can't, like...
And what I'd like to do, and I may not do this today, I may do this Wednesday or Thursday or possibly even Friday, I want to call live on air the Tenova representatives. This has been through their appeals process. I just want to get their word from it. So we can be clear of defamatory charges. This is my opinion, Tenova. Whatever else, it's a political punditry show. I'm not a journalist, but I want to get someone on the line to answer, hey, if you quoted a person $1,000 and you're charging them back in $11,000, what am I missing here? How is this not a good faith quote? Has this happened to other people in this area? Has that happened outside of the Tenova thing? Has that happened with other insurance companies? companies. This wasn't even the surgery, by the way, y'all. It was just an MRI. Wow. It was just the scan to set up the surgery. It was not the surgery. If you're talking Mr. Henry, okay, an $11,000 surgery is not outrageous. That's correct. This was just the MRI leading to the surgery.
We were talking off air a little bit about why that may be, and part of it is that socialized medicine, like the Affordable Care Act, or otherwise known as Obamacare, it incentivizes insurance companies to make up those costs elsewhere because they lose money, because when you have set prices for things, those aren't generated by the market, and so money is lost because the market doesn't determine the price. Some bureaucrat determines, well, this should be this much, and that doesn't reflect the market for those things. And so it actually makes things more expensive. It makes shortages. We've seen this in communist countries every time. I could talk about Canada all day.
Yeah, right.
Because my relatives are Canadian, and I just had a sister-in-law die up there who went through the Canadian healthcare system, and her death is not their fault. But dealing with the medical system there, it's not free. Anything you get for free is not worth having. It's not free either.
David said, "What a missed opportunity for a massive recall." Yeah, that is
Alexa,
very true.
Play "Never Gonna Give You Up."
That was a fantastic opportunity for a recall. Man, we missed that one, David. John actually says in a somewhat similar issue here. John says on Facebook, my daughter went to the emergency room and the insurance was billed over $1,000 for 3 stitches. The insurance company paid $98 and it's settled with nothing due. How does that work? I don't know. So where's that other $900? Someone's paid another $900, right? I don't know.
It makes it very complicated when it's not when the state interjects itself into anything. It's in the name of protection or whatever. The people they're protecting are their cronies, but you always end up with it more convoluted, harder to understand, like lots of different problems.
Hey, and caller in Crown Plaza, call number line 2. Hang on for me. We'll get to screen in just a second. By the way, the number's 865-888-TALK, 865-888-8255. To your question you just brought up, though, of the state's not going to solve anything, Norm said in Facebook something similar. Single-payer system would fix this, meaning the single-payer system would not fix this. But I will say for Republicans, and this is an issue that was brought up to me about a week ago. In the meantime, I've been trying to do some of my own research, message boards, things like that. There have been several Republicans that have looked at an issue like this, dealt with the specific issue of the insurance company quoting me one thing and charging me an astronomical amount, and has forced them into considering state oversight, federal regulatory boards that are going to force or hold these insurance companies accountable, because I suppose the private market's not. Now, that doesn't mean the answer is correct, but I will say situations like this are forcing Republicans to genuinely consider a Bernie Sanders program or something.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, even when the Affordable Health Care Act came out, you saw Republicans not flocking to when they realized the fight was done. They just gave you their own version of it. They weren't actually opposing it on the principle that it's not okay for anyone to pay for services for someone else unless they voluntarily do that. Like, I am not responsible for your health care. I'm sorry for your situations, but that does not make me responsible. If you need help, crowdfund it. Do different things. There's charities out there.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they're for. When you interject the government into something and mandate those things, then you throw out all sorts of repercussions that are unintended consequences, but they happen, and it's been proven. Like, these things have been done before, and they just ignore history.
Well, and the field of medicine is such an interesting animal. It not only pulls on your emotional heartstrings, but it pulls on the heartstrings as well of, sometimes the literal heartstrings, right? Of pulling on, this is your life we're talking about. What is your life really worth to you? Okay, so I guess I'll put it this way. We're talking about Tenova right now because that's the issue that's been brought to me in particular. But I would ask this question in general. Any other service contract, literally any other service contract that you would have been given, think about it this way, okay? Someone comes to your house and quotes you $500 to paint the outside of your house. I don't know the size of your house. Let's say they quote you $1,000 to paint the outside of your house. They paint the outside of your house, and then after the fact, after the service has been rendered, they bring you a bill for $11,000. That's probably what it'd be like. I'll paint your house for $1,000. Here's a good faith estimate of that. They come back and say, now that it's painted, I'm going to charge you $11,000. Would anybody stand for that?
No.
In
I don't
any
think
other
the courts
contract
would buttress that. The courts would say that's your fault for being so far out of the range of anything reasonable about your estimate. And so you should have done a better estimate. That's what I think the courts would tell the person providing the service is, look, you way underestimated this job, and that's your fault. So I don't know. It's the cronyism is why they don't hold those
Well,
things.
and that's what it is, because John just said in Facebook again, I thought there was a law passed where hospitals have to post the cost of things now, but the cronyism of the insurance companies, I would ask the follow-up of, well, is that applicability still towards insurance companies, or is it just towards the
just
hospitals?
And those prices, are they reflective of the market? So, and there are several, I forget what you call them, but they're just direct, like there are several direct pay clinics and things that have opened up in the area and across the country where they will just set the price for you, and that's what it will be. And the service is amazing. Like, this is doctors taking back the service of actually helping people and doing it for reasonable costs.
Who's that person we had on this show? Kelly, you can tell me. Nurse Debbie, I think is her name. Isn't that what her whole practice is about? It's something akin to what you
I don't know Nurse Debbie, but I do know several. I'll have to get their names, but there are some doctors in the area I know about that are doing that.
I know Nurse Debbie leans a little, and Kelly or somebody on Facebook, tell me if I'm wrong, but Nurse Debbie stuff leans a little bit more towards the holistic approach. But I think one of her approaches is, hey, let's determine this on a free market system. We're going to deal with insurance if you have it, but if we can't, we'll figure something out for you. This is a bit of free advertising as well here, but I hear advertising all the time for even some dentists now are considering this, like a Smile Center, I think is one.
Yeah, I didn't have insurance for many, many years, and I had my first child without insurance, and guess what? I paid a lot less for it because I paid cash. I negotiated with the hospital directly, but they don't have all the paperwork to deal with. They don't have all those kinds of regulatory hassles as far as paperwork goes.
Right.
There's a really great documentary. I think it's called Code Black, and it's about the last 2 county hospitals in the country. And one of the emergency room doctors says, when I first started as a doctor, I spent like 70% of my time dealing with patients.
Oh, yeah.
20%. And it may have been even less, like 80-10 or 80-20. And so he said, I spent that time dealing with patients. Now I spend that same amount of time dealing with paperwork and that little time dealing with patients.
Yeah, it's actually one of the primary concerns I've heard from medical professionals specifically. It's going to be a knock on Obamacare, I'm sorry, but that's one of the primary gripes I've heard from Obamacare is I used to be patient-driven. It used to be all about the patient. The discourse used to be the proper procedures, used to be genuine conversations about what your ailments are, and now it's just, I got to get it real quick and type it in.
Yeah, people want insurance for teeth cleaning.
Yeah.
You know, and that makes it hard because it should really only be for catastrophic things and things that, like, big time heart surgery. That's what you need insurance for. You don't need insurance for but this is what people have wanted and pushed and allowed and, think that they have a right to take money from everyone else for. So
Briscoe saying on Facebook, most insurance companies have it to where if you go to an outpatient facility or to like an urgent care clinic, you only pay a copay. Norm followed up by saying like credit cards versus cash. When you feel the cost of the transaction, you inherently spend less.
Exactly.
What's that bill people said too? If you force people to actually pay their federal taxes as opposed to just taking it out of their...
They'd be a lot more upset. Rush Limbaugh used to say that all the time. When I used to listen to Rush, he'd be like, he writes his own tax, like he writes it out. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah, and Richard made a comment here as well, too. I'll get to Richard's comment after this. Hey, we're going to hit this break, come back with, what do you do, Ray, then Linus, then Ray? I'll figure that out during the break. One last time, the question I was posing here, a person that I know came to me and said, hey, Tenova, someone through insurance, the insurance company itself quoted me $1,000, $900-something, $1,000 to get an MRI. I went to Tenova, got it done. After the fact, after the MRI was already completed, they then sent me a bill for $11,000. I'm posing the question of, has anyone else dealt this specifically with Tenova? Has anyone else dealt with this in the medical community? Has anyone dealt with this if someone coming to your house and quoting you $1,000 to paint your house and then they give you a bill for $11,000? I guess.
Good luck getting that.
Yeah, good luck getting that, right? Hey, hit this break. Be right back with these calls.
Yeah, the insurance thing is such a boondoggle because people want the state to fix it, but the state is what's caused the problem.
Yeah. And the person that brought this to me said, they said, I went to, the reason why I went with Tenova is because I got quotes from other areas that were higher than Tenova. And I went to Tenova with the quotes that I'd already received from other areas. Right. And they said, and the person was saying, if they would have said, obviously, if they would have said ahead of time, it's going to cost you $11,000, well, I would just have gone back to the first place,
right.
you know?
You have to wonder if the other places were telling the truth.
That's
the thing.
That's the other thing that was frustrating about it, is it's like pulling freaking teeth trying to get these people to answer, well, I don't know, come in and have the procedure, and we can tell you afterwards complications, so on and so forth.
Let's look at an industry of medicine that isn't covered by insurance, which are cosmetic procedures. Boy, they know the prices of
Oh, right.
They can tell you. They can tell you what it's like. That's the difference. That's the difference.
Yeah, you go get a tummy tuck or a facelift or something. Yeah, they'll tell you to.
You can look it up right now. Like I looked at surgery doing something, and they're like $5,000.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's easy. Exactly.
But it's beneficial for both parties because your plastic surgeons are guaranteed. They probably get that $5,000 up front, I would think. Right? They're guaranteed. Or maybe they don't. I don't know.
I'm sure that you work it out, but yeah.
But they're guaranteed to get that $5,000, $10,000, whatever it's going to cost, and the other people on the other end know exactly how much they're paying. But I don't know.
But people that looking to government to fix solutions to fix government problems is a problem. But most people think that the government being involved in these things helps make it better, and it doesn't. Like there are always going to be instances of malpractice.
Oh yeah.
That happens now though. Like it's not like doctors, want to go around killing people. That doesn't make for good practice and people coming back to you. Your reputation gets damaged.
And that's why people are frustrated with this because it's not on the doctors. I mean, even in law school, they would tell us, you want to know why a doctor?
I'm just saying why people want the government involved.
Yeah, I know.
Think it's going to protect them, and it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. And see, people are so afraid when you get one of these bills back and they're like, I'm going to ding your credit or we're going to start garnishing your wages. Yeah. People in any other industry, man, you'll take your attorney to court for malpractice in a second, right? Someone else will cover for that. But people are genuinely afraid to push the medical community. I kind of understand why.
Or the medical community, too. Doctors, a lot of the hoops they make you jump through now are because they don't want to get sued.
Exactly. Yes.
It's not about your care. It's about them not getting sued because they've invested a lot to go to medical school.
You know how much these doctors spend on medical malpractice insurance as well? It's an outrageous amount.
Tort reform.
You go in for an issue with migraines, and you want to know why they run you through literally every test? Because if you end up getting a brain tumor 10 years down the road, most people, and maybe rightfully so, most people are going to try and sue the doctor on the back end. But as long as we still have the lack of a loser-pay systems in America, there's no incentive not to sue.
Right.
Rather to say there is an incentive to sue.
There definitely should be, like, to bring a malpractice suit, there definitely should be evidence of malpractice. In this country right now, you don't have to really have evidence of anything to sue people. Like, you could just have, I think they did this, and very, very shallow evidence.
Well, and I hear what you're saying, because one might say that the only thing you could really push back on to stop that from happening is, I don't know, legal sanctions for a frivolous suit, which any attorney worth their salt's not going to bring that case forward anyways. But the stats will show there's a crap ton of cases that are brought forward.
Advertising all the time.
Right, and they're not exactly legally frivolous, but at the same time, it's wasting a lot of people's time sometimes,
And money, and yeah, it definitely drives up costs too, because this insurance, malpractice insurance, is really expensive. Oh, Ray has a shady Tenova personal story. See, now I went to Tenova. Well, I had to have a hysterectomy and a couple other surgeries, and I went there and got it done, and it was like really close to what we thought it was going to be. Like it wasn't. So I don't know. I just have to say they were fantastic.
They were good with me.
They were awesome. The care I got was amazing. They were really thorough about making sure that I was the patient and I was what I was supposed to get done, like making you understand.
That's why I think a distinction needs to be made between the Tenova healthcare professionals and whatever subsidiary they're working with as far as the insurance company goes to screen you to get into them. I don't know.
And I don't know if Tenova has anything to do with the insurance.
I don't know if they do or not. Somebody would have to, though, right?
Well, they'd have to. If they quote it, they give the quote. So
you would have to think, too, somebody at Tenova, some official at Tenova would have to know. You would have to talk to somebody and say, bro, somebody quoted me for your services $1,000, and now for your services they're charging me $11,000. Now, if there's a discrepancy, let's make it up, right? But
right. Hell of a discrepancy.
Yeah, Ray. So
No. Hmm.
One thing that is the only thing that's layman on a hospital bill. It's the amount due. And there are laws in what you have to pay and how you pay back. And when it gets to all of that, you've got to keep a whole file. When my mom got ill, I had to keep a whole file. I had doctors come in, and I got their name, and I got what they said, and a few of them just came in to say hello and left and billed my mom $300. And I was like, what is going on here? So I'm documenting all this stuff from Tenova and their doctors. And when the billing starts coming in, there's a sheet that I get from my insurance. Now, I pay for my insurance, and it itemizes everything that was done there at the hospital and what doctors did it. Some of the doctors at Tenova filed a claim and then tried to file it again. And the insurance company didn't pay the second claim, so they started attacking my mom, saying, you owe this. And we're saying the insurance company didn't pay it because it's a duplicate bill. And this whole scenario went on for over a year, and my dad is still getting collection letters from a company that is billing the bill twice. And I have the insurance company back, so they're not even going to come to court about it. They're not going to put it on collections because my mom passed away because of the event in Tenova. So when we get into this billing stuff, they're giving us too much information to actually decide what we're being charged for. To go to single payer, that's going to exponentially increase this information. And you're going to have these people that don't even know what it costs to have a simple checkup, to go have a CAT scan done. You won't know what you're paying. And I think that's the whole idea. And this influx of information is only to confuse you. It is so wrong. It is so bad how billing comes out of any hospital, particularly Tenova, that they are able, those doctors are able to resubmit bills to patients, and with all that information, you don't know if you paid it or not.
Let me add some context to what Ray's talking about. Here's a summary of the experience that the person that brought this to my attention was saying. And there's documents. I'm looking at the documents right now. I don't know how open I want to be about these documents yet until I get Tenova on the phone. But some of the documents that I've been looking at prove this empirically, saying a summary of my experiences are as follows. March 2019, I saw an orthopedic surgeon about pain in my left shoulder. He did an exam, including x-ray, and ordered an MRI. My company recently swapped to a health savings account with a $3,000 deductible. So I was trying to be a good steward of the fund and shopped around for an MRI. The first thing I noticed was how difficult it was to obtain medical costs for even simple tests prior to the service. That's a whole different thing Sherry and I were talking about. You go and try and shop around some of these companies. Well, let us do the surgery first. Let's do the MRI first, and then we'll tell you after the facts what it costs. Anyways, they go on to say, after 6 phone calls, I found out the MRI provider associated with orthopedic clinic charged $2,200 for 2 MRIs I needed. I shopped around for MRI cost at other facilities and found that MD Save advertised the MRI procedures I needed at Tenova Turkey Creek Medical Facility in Knoxville, Tennessee for $1,100, including the radiologist. I contacted Tenova, and after several conversations regarding the cost of the MRI, I was told I could use MD Save or they could provide a competitive cost. Upon arriving at the MRI facility, I was provided a, quote, estimate for outpatient service with a good faith estimate included, copies available with total services an estimate of $1,242, and was told they offered a 20% discount for upfront payment. So I paid $993, the difference of the $1,200 quoted and the 20% discount. I paid $993 upfront that day and was told that there would be no other charges except for the radiologist. After the test was completed, you get where we're following here, okay? told to quote at $1,200, 20% discount for upfront costs, paid the $1,000, $993 really. No other charges except for the radiologist. After the test, I received a bill from Tenova for $10,793, almost 11 times what I was told, and provided the estimate. I was shocked that the bill was that high, especially when I had the option to use MD Save at $1,100 and was told during my in-person review that this would be the total cash price cost. So, my assessment, Dad, is unless the radiologist costs $10,000 additional dollars to consider, you get what I'm saying, Ray? Let me ask, the reason why I read that story on air, and I want to couple it with your personal account, is have you heard, we got 1 minute left, man, have you heard any other anecdotal accounts or anything like that's happening? Maybe not specifically to Tenova, but in healthcare or in this area at all?
Yes, absolutely. I take care of 2 70-plus seniors. One here in Oak Ridge, one in Knoxville, and they require a lot of hospital visits. Now, when those visits end up into a billing scenario where there's multiple layers going on, that you're going to have these bills come in, and you don't know what went for what. So to increase the charge on something, the majority of the people are not going to know, because you noted that the patient that you were reading from, they took notes. They wrote down what they were told. And that's exactly what I had to do. And I'm doing that with these 2 senior gentlemen also, because when the bill comes, you won't know what it was for, and it's a huge single payer plan, I believe.
Dude, right? When you just said you don't know what it's for, I'm looking at the bill right now. When they came back with the $11,000, there was no itemization of what that $11,000 was. Yeah. It was just total price of $11,000, not what you were being charged for. How it's itemized? Was it the radiologist cost? Was it additional procedures? Was it the contrast versus non-contrast? You have no idea. It just says total price $11,000.
Yes, it's the same thing for a gastrointestinal for one of my seniors. They billed, and we didn't know what it was for. I mean, they went in there, got the blood pressure, got the temperature. The doctor looked at them a little bit and ordered a colonoscopy. But it ended up being, after the deductible was paid and his co-insurance, because both of these senior members have a secondary insurance.
Wow.
And yes, and there was still money left over that was owed to the doctor. Now, with me, I don't know if it's a Medicare thing, because that kind of problem happens in Medicare so much that they don't know what they're billing for. Me, paying for my own insurance, I know what the charges are, and I keep track of who's doing the performance there, or the investigation, or just looking at me as a patient. If you don't keep track of that, they could go ahead and bill you, and they could add on, because the key word here in the contract, it's an estimate.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Estimate.
That's what I was saying, Ray, buddy. I appreciate your vulnerability there, telling that story. We'll talk to you soon, man.
You got it. Bye.
Yeah, there goes Ray. 9:36 in the morning. Hit the spray. Come back with Linus's call.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
Crazy. It's insane.
Goes on. Tenova had recently charged the out-of-network with UHC, and apparently this allows the provider to charge the patient with whatever they want. If this situation were communicated up front with a reasonable estimate that is enforced, then there's informed consumer choice, even though the no-limit scenario leads to widely diverse pricing and the cost is difficult to obtain several days in advance of the procedure. In this case, however, no semblance of an estimate was attempted, with the billed amount being 1,100% increase. That's 1,100% increase. In addition, I was told that the actual cost, I was told that this was the actual cost since they presented this as an alternative to the MD Save fixed price. Furthermore, if there was any communication, the actual cost increase was 11 times the estimate. No sane person would have elected to choose this rather than the initial $2,200. Yeah, that's true too.
And that's the thing, though, is people are so ignorant about what's caused the problems with insurance companies. Like, I know the common line is just, they just want money. Insurance companies, they just want money. That's not the case. Yes, they're a business and they are in it for a profit, but it's the government interjecting itself which makes those things possible.
Right.
It doesn't, like, that would not be possible. They could try, like, it inflates costs. It gives artificial, prices for things. Like, it's a really bad situation, and people have they keep legislating it, though. They keep wanting more legislation on it, and that just makes it worse and worse.
It's like the 2008 housing crisis. I've tried to listen to as many economists as I possibly can on what caused that, and the general consensus I usually get is most people in America think it was deregulation that just caused these banks to go wild. And the economists that I've hit into say, no. It was the federal government essentially legislating that you have to force yourself to be able to lend these subprime loans. And then when you do that, every single person like, well, obviously I want to lend these things, especially if you're forcing me to do it. I mean,
it's definitely part of it. That is it. Like you get the Fed involved, and I mean, there's so many layers to it. But I went to a talk in Nashville once, and I can't remember the guy's name. He was like one of Nixon's aides and one of Reagan's administration aides, and like he worked in a bunch of. But anyways, he was talking about how this was caused by Wall Street and the federal government, the collusion basically that they have, and the fact that they were supposed to get, they were mandated to give subprime loans to people who couldn't pay, and they knew it, but the government kept allowing it because they want these social things done, not actual fiscal responsibility, because they want to say, well, under our administration, so many, people of color got this many, it went up this much, and that's why we're so great, because look how we're making opportunities. Instead of like actually letting people bring themselves up and get to that point where they're ready to buy a house,
and then you have this diffusion of responsibility thing, which goes to your point all the time, where you have individuals that are within that big system that think to themselves, this feels immoral, but I'm not going to win this battle if I do something about it alone. So I'll play the system. It'll help me out in the meantime, right?
Just doing my job.
Right, exactly. And then every time you have a slight more diffusion of responsibility, and that's diffused a little bit more, now all of a sudden you have an entire system of individuals that are diffusing their responsibility because someone somewhere is going to take care of this. I don't have to. It might be immoral, but it's not my job to take care of it, right?
The buck stops here. That's the problem. Like, and that's my issue with police. Like that's what always it comes down to with them is that, I understand that this is your job, but is your job moral? Like, that's the thing. Are you doing something that's immoral or not? You're still responsible for that. Like, I cannot alleviate myself, nor can you, to do a job. And yes, the politicians are to blame too. Like, that's why you blame the politicians. You don't get to pass the buck because without you, they couldn't do this.
Yeah, right. No, that's very true.
They can pass all the pieces of paper they want, but if they don't have anybody to violently enforce it, good luck.
Well, that's the thing. Look, law and law enforcement, the whole system is ultimately relying upon voluntary compliance. Okay, so the state legislature could pass any bill they wanted to, but if you have 100% of police officers that just refuse to enforce that law, you basically have marijuana laws in America right now.
It's nullification.
Well, the federal government says that it's illegal. The DEA is not enforcing it, so is it really illegal? I mean, it's illegal at state level, but at a federal level, is anyone really concerned about marijuana being illegal or not? If the law enforcement's not enforcing it, I guess it's still illegal in the books. They could enforce it, but no, you're right.
Speaking of, we were talking about Waco earlier. One of the things I learned recently doing a little research on that is that when law enforcement can get all of the military training and also military equipment without having to reimburse the federal government as long as they claim it's in doing operation of the drug war.
Oh, interesting.
That's one of the things that happened at Waco was the police there. The reason they had a tank was because they had done this and said it was for the drug war. They had a helicopter.
Is the war on drugs genuinely convincing to anybody anymore? I mean,
Jeff Sessions.
Well, I guess it's true.
A lot of people still come down on I think drugs are wrong. So, well, yeah, maybe they are. That's not this is not working, regardless. But people don't want to look at it. They want to be told what to believe. As soon as Rush says it's okay, or Mark Levin, or Sean Hannity, as soon as you hear those people saying it's okay, that's when the rest of
See, that's what's frustrating me, though, is you don't have to be pro-legalization of everything. You don't even have to be pro-legalization of marijuana. Goodness, you don't even have to be pro-decriminalization of marijuana to admit that the war on drugs is not working.
Failure. And
right?
Every country that's done it the way that the libertarians want to do it has actually gotten a lot better.
Yeah, now that's the argument they'll never consider. Yeah.
Hey, let me just wrap this story up real quick here, and then I'll get to Linus's call, switching the topic a little bit. All right, so I already went over what the personal experience of this person was. Quoted right at about $1,000, paid right at about $1,000, had the procedure done for the MRI, then was billed $11,000. Goes on to say Tenova had recently changed to out-of-network with UHC, and apparently this allows the provider to charge the patient whatever they want, pretty much whatever they want. And there was no idea about this reasonable estimate being considered, not at all. This person goes on to eventually propose something called a simple bill of patient financial rights, with these principles included. 1, access to the cost estimates with enough lead time prior to a procedure to make competitive choices. That's number 1. Access to cost estimates with enough lead time prior to a procedure to make competitive choices. All providers will be included, and clear indication of insurance network status. 2, requirements that these these estimates be adhered to in a specific range. This would drive a competitive market and restore transparency and trust in the healthcare business system. Tell me what you think about that Bill of Patients' Financial Rights. I don't know. Let's go to Linus. He's been hanging on for quite some time there. Sorry about that, Linus. Linus, subheading here says, quote from Clinton, to celebrate Easter. That's all we are now, buddy. It's just Easter worshipers.
I want to talk for just a minute about liberal compassion, if I might.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have the annual Easter egg hunt at the White House. Well, they also used to have those in Arkansas at the governor's mansion. Bill and Hillary were installed in the mansion. She was the first lady there, and they were having a Easter egg hunt, and a bunch of mentally challenged kids were trying to find Easter eggs on the lawn there in front of the governor's mansion. Hillary showed up and walked through the crowd, and he made her mad. She turned to Bill, and she says to Bill, "Get these Crips off my lawn."
Wait, this isn't a real story, is it? Are you just messing?
It's a real story, yeah. You can look it up.
Is it really?
Wow.
Get these Crips off my lawn. This is a lady that feels so much compassion for people. She was going to rule us from the White House.
I think Hillary Clinton's a bit of a
I'm not
psychopath.
I know I'm not responding, Linus, because I'm literally flabbergasted here. I'm stunned.
A lot of people were, yeah.
I mean, I'm not. I think
anyway,
that's more
I
common
find this
than
just
not.
amazing. Now they've got a new tact here. I saw Bernie Sanders on here announcing that even terrible people who are in jail ought to have the right to vote. That's a quote. I've never seen anything like this. You know, the Democrats have gone somewhat crazy, and they've split into 3 groups now. One group screams, impeach, impeach, impeach. The other is the slime group. They just want to investigate and slime. Then the third group wants to talk about the issues. That's a very small group, and they really got a problem, because how are you going to argue with the Trump economy?
Yeah, like Nancy Pelosi is having a heck of a time right now trying to deal with those 3 warring factions. I mean, there's a headline that I have right now saying we can still hold Trump accountable without impeachment, and I'm thinking, oh, that is a losing battle all day long. You've been pitching to your own populace for 2.5, almost 3 years now that don't worry, we're going to get this guy, we're going to take it back down, we're going to relitigate the 2016 election, we're going to impeach him at some point, and now all of a sudden you make a 180 spin of, well, we can still hold him accountable without impeachment. You're satiating too many parties at that point, you know?
Well, they basically stole the election to get into Congress with the help of Paul Ryan. I mean, you had 40 Republicans all of a sudden quit at the same time. That was orchestrated, trust me.
Oh, yeah.
And the net result of that was they managed to slide back in again, using the lines that were in Mueller's investigation is a way to do it. And now that's been kicked out from under them, too. I have seen things I had never thought I would see in my lifetime come from this party. It's frightening. It is honestly frightening.
Well, it's frightening in one sense that, frankly speaking, Linus, I kind of, not personally take some of the blame for this, but I think Republicans in general should take a little bit of the blame for this. I say that because, Linus, buddy, we kind of let them get away with this for a little while. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Well, it ain't we. It's the rhinos that are behind a lot of this.
Sure.
They've had a secret hook up with the Democrats for years. And all of this in the end is driven by lobbyists, I think. If you've got the money, you can buy either side, and they are right there. I'm holding a thing that was sent to me by Lamar Alexander, and it was so bad I kept it.
Well, but I'm thinking about my personal concern too, Linus. When I started to listen to the John Solomons and everybody back in December of 2017, when they knew full well that Mueller had nothing on the conspiracy, there were still, even people like me to some extent, there were still some of those objective pundits out there were saying, well, let's let the process play out. I was giving too much faith to Democrats, which is something that I should have learned my lesson a long time ago.
Romney while you're at it, he'll listen to you.
Yeah, that's true.
As I was saying, I'm holding a flyer that Lamar Alexander sent me about Medicare Part D. And he's got a picture of Sanders and Pelosi on the front of it, clenching their fists, trying to scare old people. And it says, liberals want government interference in Medicare Part D. What does that mean for you? What this actually means is the drug companies don't like the idea they might have to negotiate their prices with the government. Now, they pop up with stuff like restrictions on access to medicines. Well, we got that now. Government bureaucrats between your doctor. You got that now. And higher premiums, you got that now. And the lie side of this little letter says billions in savings, that's a joke. Access to medicines you need, that's another joke. And a choice of plans with affordable premiums, that's a howler right there.
I'll say this much, Linus, because we got to hit this break here coming up. Americans spend, and I think this stat's correct, Americans spend more on healthcare than any other developed nation in the world for a myriad of reasons, but the simple fact remains that we do. And with that being said, most Americans, to some extent, are frustrated with our current system. Now, what do you do with that? I don't know. But if you want any sense of commonality, I think we should and could start there.
The answer is competition. If they don't compete, and why should they if they don't have to?
Yes.
They can charge you anything they want to.
Yes,
and they do.
The market should determine costs always.
Market should, and it's not.
Right, exactly.
Let me drop one on you right quick. I tried shopping for a drug once that I have to have. I went to my doctor. I said, can you prescribe so-and-so? I understand it's cheaper. The doctor says, I have no idea. The way it's set up, you don't know what it costs until your insurance company starts to pay for it.
Right,
How would you like to go to the grocery store? Load your cart with groceries and not be able to find out what anything costs until you get to the checkout.
Right. This is a little bit of the story that I brought up today.
That's socialized medicine.
That's a racket,
Jack.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a false prices and costs you more on the back end.
All I have to say, Lamar Alexander's.
Hey, buddy, Linus, I appreciate it. It's actually interesting you brought up Lamar Alexander. That's going to transition us into what I'm going to end the show with here, so stick around for that. Linus, we always appreciate hearing from you, buddy.
Bye-bye.
There goes Linus 951. After this break, I'm going to get Sherry to let us know a little bit more about Saturday, this Saturday?
Yes.
Is that what's happening?
Yes.
The march against federally mandated vaccines. We had our guest Kelly in here talking about this last week as well. Be right back.
As well. I say that so often in the show. Two as well. Stop that.
Mandated vaccination is a Republican senator, Briggs, he wants that to happen.
Briggs wants? I didn't know
that. Briggs wants mandatory vaccinations.
Really? Is he a physician or something?
He was.
He was.
I mean, he may still be. I don't know.
Right.
He's a physician, yeah. But yeah, I mean, how is that a freedom? Like you don't understand anything about personal freedom and who is your children belong to.
See, here's my problem with that, Sharon, is once you start having elected representatives talking in that way, the Supreme Court, at least on 2 occasions that I know, has been very clear, and I'm paraphrasing only slightly here, Facebook, but the Supreme Court has been very clear that individual liberty at some point must become subservient to the general welfare and the policing power of the state. And that's only a very, very slight paraphrase. I want to say the original case was 1930-something. I'll look it up again. It was reaffirmed in 30 or reaffirmed in 20 or something. But on 2 or 3 cases, Supreme Court has set precedent that, hey, bro, if you're talking about mandating vaccines, obviously one was for the state or federal school system. The other ones, I forget what they apply to. But that's my fears. When legislators start talking about this, they probably know that they have, historical quarterback.
I don't know why people are surprised when the people who write the laws and have all the power back themselves up with the laws. Like I'm always surprised people are surprised by that. Like, of course they think they have supremacy over you because they write the laws. They have the power. It's the political class. They are the ruling class and they want to control you. They believe they own you. It's simple.
I know, and I know. See, I'm still trying to figure out where I come down on this as far as the actual science behind this is concerned. At a minimum, I will say, as frustrating as it is to hear from medical professionals, if you have to hire a PR firm or something, maybe that's what you need to do, honestly. If you think you have the stats to support your case, maybe we need to have this debate yet one more time in this country to convince. I think that's all anybody, and maybe even Sherry is trying to say too, is look, if you need, who is it? Rand Paul said, if this is a platform for persuasion, Rand Paul's stance is, yeah, I think you should vaccinate your kids. This is not a platform for persuasion of vax versus anti-vax. Right now, this is an issue of the government forcing you to put something in your body.
It's about freedom. It's about being forced to have a medical procedure. Like, then, if that's the case, then all the, where they do it, where they make you infertile.
Oh, yeah.
The sterilizations that they did of mentally challenged people before. Then those
Some
would be
people would be
okay.
for that, though.
Right, exactly, and it's terrible because you should not have to undergo any medical procedure that you do not want. What they did to a lot of they gave the black population syphilis in some areas. Like that's terrible. But if that's the argument you're going to go with, then that makes it okay because the government said you had to do it.
Hey, it's 9:55 in the morning. Last 3 or 4 minutes we have left here. I'm just going to go ahead and let Sherry Voluntary run with this. What's going on this Saturday?
Okay, so this Saturday, there will be a rally against forced vaccinations. It's 11 a.m. at the Maryville City Hall, and the participants will be located behind the Sam Houston statue. And what I want people to know is that this is not about being pro-vax or anti-vax. This is about personal freedoms. This is about you being forced to give your children medical treatments that you do not want. My children are vaccinated, right? But I do not want to force other parents to do something, give their children medicine that they are not comfortable with. And I think that goes to the very heart of freedom and liberty.
Well, but let's be clear about this, though, Sherry. There is large Republican backing for this, or at least sponsorship or co-sponsorship.
Yeah, I know, Senator Briggs is for it,
and
as far as I
National
know.
Senator Alexander has been carefully walking around the issue.
I don't care
right?
what they're for. If you don't understand personal freedom to that extent where you think people should be forced, mandated to vaccinate their children to give them a medical procedure, you should not be in office. Like you do not understand freedom. And that's not representative. You aren't representing people who don't want to give their I've looked into it a little bit. I waited to give my children the vaccines. I waited till my son was 4, and then I had to do my daughter a little bit earlier. But I waited as long as I could because I think that they do them way too young, way too quick, and they give you too many. And the arguments from some people is, look, the vaccinations could be okay, but it's all the other stuff they put in there, the preservatives that are. So I don't know. They could be correct, and I'm not going to go down that road. The point is that parents should be the ones making medical decisions for their children, not bureaucrats and not legislators.
Well, and Rand Paul's contention on this as well is there are many more vaccines that make much more sense than the MMR does. Yeah. Rand Paul's whole thing is if you want to talk about infecting population, if you want to talk about death rates, if you want to talk, then forcing flu vaccines should be far more prominent than forcing MMR ever should. And Rand Paul's whole thing again was the Senate committee, whatever committee deals with this HELP or whatever the acronym is, Rand Paul, yeah, exactly. Rand Paul's whole thing was this is not a platform right now necessarily for persuasion, meaning he's a physician. He says I vaccinated my children. We can have a dialogue about that. Maybe we should have a dialogue about that. I think it's important to bring that issue up again, myself and Rand Paul as well. Rand Paul said exactly like Sherry did. I vaccinated my own kids. This is not a platform for persuasion. This is simply the federal government forcing you to put something in your own body.
Let's look at the rates of children that are managed by the state. That like in children in foster care, like the incidences of them being drugged on ADHD medicines, whatever, is super high. I want to say it's like 400%.
That's exactly.
I can't remember.
That's exactly what Heather just brought up on Facebook as well.
So I mean, let's look at how they parent. I don't think they have any right to tell us how to parent our children.
By the way, again, that's this Saturday, March 27th, 11 a.m., Maryville City Hall. March 27th, 11 a.m., Maryville City Hall.
And there's a Facebook event that you can go rally against forced vaccinations. Go in there and let them know you're coming.
Be back tomorrow doing it big.
When you think of North Broadway.
Yeah, I've read some, because I have a really good friend who's an anti-vaxxer, and a lot of what, like, you know how most, like there's a lot of it seems like loopholes that vaccination companies or vaccines get around that other drugs don't.
Oh yeah.
And so they don't have to go through certain testing, and like it's really strange. So I would say, like, yeah, that is odd, and why is that? Like, I'd want to ask the question.
Well, I'll Miss Facebook, I'll be totally frank about what Grant's opinion about this is. This is not a Mr. Henry thing. I have been personally, I'll just be honest, I've been personally afraid about even researching this topic because of how illogical I'll seem to the other side. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I had this conversation with my brother, quite frankly, the neuroscientist up there in Virginia, working right outside of D.C. We have these conversations, and he'll tell me, and rightfully so, he'll tell me, dude, do you realize how dumb the scientific community thinks you are for even posing that question? I'm not saying that's right or incorrect. Right. All I'm saying is that's what is in the back of my subconscious every single time I start to even try and tackle or approach this issue is all the overwhelming consensus of the professionals that have made a decision on this tell me ahead of time, bro, this is beyond conspiracy theory. You are stupid for even asking this question. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But the point I'm making is that precludes so many seemingly intelligent people from even broaching that topic.
Well, the thing is, as a scientist, you should understand that the layperson is not a scientist.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make them stupid.
Yes.
That makes you specialized. And so it's your job. The onus is on you to explain it in a way that makes sense. And there's a lot of things surrounding, we were just talking about, a lot of things surrounding vaccinations that really don't make sense. That they get around certain things, they don't have to go through certain, like, processes, whatever. Like there's some questionable things going on, and people have a right to be concerned about that.
Well, you're exactly right, and I kind of want to say to the scientists, and if I was a politician, this is the pitch I would have to make. If I was in Washington State, for example, because this is where they're having a terrible problem with this. If your legislators are forcing people to get vaccinated, and if there ever was a bipartisan split on something, it's this vax issue. It's not immigration anymore, or bipartisan agreement. I mean,
right.
Half of the anti-vaxxers are liberals, the other half, liberal, hippie, smoking, whatever. Right. The other half are libertarians, don't put something in my body. They agree about this one issue. Conservative Christians.
I know a lot of conservative Christians.
And I, as a legislator, I would want to say to the scientists, I get it. I know how frustrating it must be for you to get one more time pitched to the populace that there needs to be a convincing, persuasive pitch to why you need vaccines. Right. However, you scientists recognize we have a problem. If you're calling it a problem, I know it's frustrating, but the onus is kind of on your community, as you said, the expert community, to convince the populace yet one more time that this is needed.
It's easy to call somebody blanket statement. They're just stupid. Like, well, no, they're not stupid. What they are is concerned. Answer their concerns. Tell us why they get around this. Tell us, like, maybe there are some issues there. I think that both sides are probably a little bit right, in my opinion, that there are some things that need to be cleared up with vaccinations and things that need to be looked at seriously. But also, I think vaccinations are probably a good thing. So I think they could both be a little bit right, but the problem is that they draw this line of I am completely this and completely that, and the other side is just an idiot and they're evil, and they're not really broaching the concerns of the other side. They're talking to their own audience about. So I think that's, if the onus is on anyone, it is the scientific community to say, look, this is why. And people have the right to know what they're putting in their bodies, and they have the right to understand, like, you can't just call them stupid for that.
It's funny you say that because Norm just said on Facebook, "My body, my choice."
Exactly.
Yeah, it's an alternative abortion argument, right? I mean,
yes.
But the scientists are making the claim now. Look, we haven't had a documented case of measles. Say, I don't know if this is true. This is just something akin to what I've heard in the Washington people tell me is we haven't had a documented case of measles in the state of Washington since 1998. Whatever, similar stats of what that is. Well, then one might reasonably say, okay, so it's been close to 20 years then, is what you're saying, that we've even had a reason to have this conversation, right? So you're saying 20 years, I'm not saying it's proper, I'm not saying it's overtly reasonable, I'm saying it's understandable that 20 years of a span where you don't have that conversation, it makes sense that it's reintroduced now, right? Of people just questioning.
And I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not a collectivist, even when it comes to this. If you must have my consent and have my children undergo some kind of medical procedure so that the herd is safe, well, you can just take that back where it came from, because I mean, I do what's best for me and my kids, regardless of you. Like, that's the thing. Like, I'm concerned about my community, but when it comes down to the rubber meeting the road, those are the people I'm responsible for. Well, and if I think something's going to harm my kids, I'm not going to do it.
That's what it's so interesting for me.
So they're going to take children away from parents now who won't get vaccinations?
Well, that's why I have such a problem with this, and why I'm constantly struggling with this cognitive dissonance, is because I keep running up against my libertarian side. The basic predicate of this vaccination argument is, and I said this to Kelly when she was here too, and I think she agreed with this on principle if it works this way, is vaccinations are not a cure, obviously. It's just a stymie for a single generation so it's not reintroduced. So if everybody agrees, you'll probably get rid of a disease. Now, that one person that doesn't do it, now you're going to reintroduce it where everybody else becomes susceptible to that. The libertarian to me says, okay, if your liberty starts encroaching upon my liberty, now we need to figure out what that is, and to what extent does vaccinations play a hand to that, of you not vaccinating your kids now encroaches upon my kids' liberty type thing. That's why I have such a problem dealing with this.
Vaccinations are not a right. Like, you know, that's not something, like, disease happens, right? And so you don't have a right not for me to do something. There are no positive rights. So I am not obligated to get a medical procedure for your benefit. And there's no positive right that way. That's not how it works. I have a responsibility to me and mine. And let's face it. There are people who don't believe. Some of my grandparents were like this. They didn't believe in medical care, and they did vitamins. They did all sorts of natural things, but they thought medical care was a sin. So if someone came down with a disease that they would die from, that would hurt them. But who's it hurting the most? Like, the state is saying that it's a violation against the state.
Yeah.
But who does that hurt? Like, I don't want people to make that decision, right? I want people to go get medical care. But when I lived in Colorado, there was a case out there like this where a little girl died because her parents only believed in prayer, and she died. And that's not saying prayer is a bad thing. Don't take me out of context there. But that if that's what you believe, who's going to suffer for that? Of course, your child is going to suffer, and the family, the people who should love and care for that child the most and want to do the best for them. And according to these people, that's their faith, and that's what they believe. And so, who suffers the negative effects of that?
Yeah,
that's the parents. Nobody loves your kids more than you do. I keep telling people, like, stop with all the. Well, some people don't. Yes, there's always an outlier, but most people love their kids more than anyone else.
Honestly, I think the scientific community would have a much easier time pitching, and I know that sounds crazy, Facebook, they would have a much easier time pitching forced vaccinations for the flu than they would for MMR at this point. The reason why I say that, frustratingly enough, I'm looking at the stats right here. This CNN reporting on this. In all of 2017, 118 people from 15 states in D.C. had measles. In all of 2016, 86 people in 19 states had measles, all right? So this is what it's a difficult thing to pitch to the American people. You have 325 million people living here, less than 100 almost in each year. It's really tough.
Look at swine flu. Remember the swine flu epidemic?
Yeah, right.
How many people? It's like 23 people actually. Like I don't want 23 people to die.
I don't want one.
But
right.
But that's such as life,
Yeah,
right? People die of disease. We can't prevent everything, and especially if it comes up to someone's, my liberties being taken away so that someone else. Like I'm sorry, that's not okay. You have to protect liberty because that protects everyone.
Yeah. And I know somebody that's listening right now, or God forbid I run for office one day, someone's going to watch back to this or something like this. What someone is going to say, well, hold on, Grant, you have to understand, we had eradicated this disease from Americans. So the fact that 118 people is 118% worse than it was in 2000. Granted, sure, pitch that harder,
right.
push that topic harder to the anti-vax community.
Maybe it just wasn't eradicated. Maybe statistic, because look, I know how field studies work. My kids, when they took this class down at the zoo, they went out and they did this, I forget what it's called, but it's where you put out a piece of string and a certain amount in the area, and then you go and you look for all the butterflies in this area, and then you make an estimate over the size of the area, how many there are, right? Is that a great way to do things? Well, it's the way that they do them. I don't know that it's accurate, because the conditions could be right in the place where you're at. There's more of them or less of them. So it's sort of the same thing with these diseases. You may not have seen or had it reported to you that these things are out there, but they could still be out there. It doesn't mean you've eradicated.
That's what Kelly said as well too. Is that no, they didn't. Nothing was eradicated.
Yeah.
And see, that's the problem. Is that the scientific community would come and say, well, no, by eradicated, what I meant is we didn't get rid of the disease. It's still somewhere out there. It's just not. We don't have reported cases of it. Reported cases of it actually documented in America. And that's why I think I want to go back to what you said okay, so if you have a legal problem, if anybody in the world has a legal problem constitutionally speaking, though, I don't know, what do they go to, like an Alan Dershowitz or someone, okay? You're not going to go to some random Joe Blow on the side of the street. So again, if we need to make a constitutional effort to convince the American people of something, go to whoever that expert is. I know it sucks to say, someone in the medical community is going to look at me right now and say, dude, you are a moron. I get it. But it goes back to what you said. You can't expect people
on their part,
right?
And it's like that's just like saying the science is settled. Well, no, it's clearly not, because these people who are subject to your scientific claims and legislation based on that have a right to know what's going on and have a right to say no. Like, I don't believe in mandatory anything. So I think that this is a very, very dangerous road to go down, because if they can, like, why aren't they telling us what kind of soap to use? Like, why isn't that mandated? They can tell us what to put in our bodies, what we can and can't. Like, why aren't they telling us what laundry detergent to use? Why not just do everything? Because they're basically making the claim that they know better for you than you do.
Right. I don't know. And again, I go back to, look, if it is, clearly scientists are not settled on this topic. Shut up, watch.
Oh, and that the other thing, Kelly said, clearly scientists are not settled on this topic. And that's true. There are scientists who are anti-vax.
Yeah.
And that a lot of these people look to, like, these people aren't just, out there just making stuff up. There are people in the medical scientific community who have a problem with this. My mother-in-law was one of them. She was a nurse for many years, and she was very concerned about vaccination. She's 90 years old this year. So this was a while back, but she was very concerned about a lot of the preservatives and things that they were, mercury, I think, was one of the things they were using. And, like, there were issues even then. And she's an educated person. She was a nurse. She's not dumb. She understands medicine. And so I think that that's the other thing, is that you can't just say that the science is settled and the medical community agrees. Well, that's like saying the scientific community agrees about climate change.
Right.
They don't. That's just what you hear.
Yeah.
So...
Well, look, and there's another one of my faults too. we had the VP of the Weather Channel on. We had some high level person at NASA, and another person that I forget. We got his book out there, the Inconvenient Truth, I think is it called. We've had a bunch of experts on that were going against the climate change thing, and I had the same assessment that I do with, unfortunately, for my indoctrination through law programs. Is if there's a general, or if I'm told there's a general consensus of experts, I tend to lean towards whatever the general consensus of experts is. Until I started hearing from some of these other people on climate change, and they were saying not necessarily. They were using government data.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you are funded by the government and you come down on the side of the government and what policies that they want to institute, like, there's all kinds of problems with conflict of interest there. If you're not independently funded, there's an issue because you're more likely to come down on the side of the people who pay your bills.
Right.
And so that's part, and not to mention all of the outright fibbing and forging of data that many of this climate change people have been proven to have participated in. So the models, they know that certain models will do this, and it's you gotta watch who's paying the bills.
Well, that's what Norm said on Facebook too. And Eric just made a funny comment. What if the world was round and flat? I know that might be a silly thing to bring up, but frankly speaking, okay, let's talk about settled science. I think most people should agree that it is probably settled science right now. Not probably. I would say it's 100% empirically proven settled science that we have a spherical world. Okay, fine. So what I'm saying now is if it truly is genuine quest for proof, if it truly is completely settled science that vaccinations are good, they don't cause autism, whatever, then I know the science community might say that sucks, but we're here. We are here, whether the scientific community wants to say we are not. We are here now, where a sizable portion of Americans are asking to resettle that science. Yeah. And if you can't just brush it under the rug, as frustrating as it is, right? If it would be like, okay, fine. If I'm a legal expert and someone wants to come to me and say that it's not settled legal, commentary right now that hate speech is protected under the First Amendment, yes, it is. Yes, it is. But if I have to reconvince you of that, I will do that. All right?
Yeah, and it's kind of like that redoing the Constitution every 20 years. People have to be retaught. And, oh, shoot. So I think it was on this issue about science and...
Settled science.
Yeah, I forget. It's that pseudoscience. Yes, there's a lot of pseudoscience out there. And looking at flat earth stuff, you have to cut out all the pseudoscience. So people that are saying, taking a picture of the horizon saying, look, it's flat.
Yeah, right.
That's not scientific, right? And so there's a lot of pseudoscience in some of these things. And when you cut all that out, then yes, you can get to the actual science.
Well, that's why
things, the body is a many splendored thing, right? Very fascinating. Even doctors don't understand. Like if they could say absolutely it's settled, then they could cure cancer, right? Because you should know everything. It's not that simple. It's just not that simple.
Yep. That's why we have scientific method. It cuts out anecdotal evidence. It cuts out pseudoscience. And now, frustratingly enough for me, it convolutes legitimate issues. Now, all of a sudden, because the federal government is forcing me to do something with my body, abortion or vaccines or otherwise, that should be the issue. The issue should be to what extent are we going to allow, as the Supreme Court has said, to what extent are we going to allow our individual liberty to be subservient to the general welfare and the policing power of the state? That's almost exactly what the Supreme Court says.
Zero.
She says zero. My opinion might be a little bit more than zero. Somebody else's opinion might be something else. The point is that question has nothing to do with vaccines.
That's the thing. Opinions don't matter. When it comes to my liberty, nobody has a right to me but me.
Right.
Nobody has a right to make decisions for me but me. So... no, that's illegitimate. That coming from just a moral point of view, it's illegitimate to say that I have some kind of obligation to do something for someone else's benefit. I don't.
I mean, honestly, I think that the conversation we're talking about now of this march that's about to happen, I hope this analogy is drawn correctly. That has more to do, say, with abortion rights and car insurance than it does with specifically vaccines. Do you understand what I'm saying? I know it's a terrible analogy to draw, but the idea is me being subservient to the policing power due to somebody else's general welfare. Right. Do you know what I'm saying? Right.
This is about positive rights. This isn't about me making a choice that other people don't like.
Right.
This is about the actual liberty of a person not to undergo something because the government says it. I mean, it would be the same with anything. That if the government says you have to do this, were they going to bring guns to your house like they do if you don't pay your taxes? Like, these are liberty issues. They're not. I don't care where you fall on the vaccine thing. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that you respect that other people have the right not to believe what you do and not to undergo procedures because of it.
Yeah,
if it were just opinions and all that was, it didn't affect people's lives, then fine, have all the opinions you want. But this is actually coming down to forcing people to do things.
Right. All right. And first, for me, it's if I finish that sentence out, it's basically the government forcing people to do things that I personally think they should be doing anyway.
Right.
that's my personal opinion.
Right. You'll do it for your kids, and if they're
right,
like their kids suffer because they didn't get them vaccinated, that's on them. Like that's who the onus should fall on. You're responsible for your children, and that's who. If they're damaged in some way, that comes back to you. And you love your kids. You're not going to do something or not get them something that you really think is going to benefit them.
I think this sucks the most for those households that, I think somebody on Facebook were telling me this before, the households that have one parent that says yes vax and the other parent says no vax. That
happens with homeschool a lot, especially with divorced parents, and one wants to homeschool, or even a lot of people I know who want to homeschool that their spouse isn't for it. And so they don't, but it can cause a lot of problems because there's strong opinions on both sides.
Well, all right, Facebook.
You can make the best of it.
Hey, y'all like Voluntary Tuesdays? I think that's what we're going to start calling it. It's good stuff.
I like it.
Yeah. I told you that, I love you.
Capitalize the T's. Voluntary Tuesday.
Do you capitalize the T's?
No, I mean, I would do it stylistically.
Oh, okay, I got you. Right. All right, Facebook, y'all the best. I love you. We're gonna end it there. Dan's already added.
Kelly loves it.
Yeah, Kelly does love it. All right, y'all. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.